Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spotlight Live, I guess, here on the GRAPPL YouTube. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And we thought we'd play around with the format today. We're live at 5:45-ish, kind of. It's kind of a GRAPPL Live. It's kind of a Spotlight. I'm just settling into some new digs here, which did mean I had to do an extra bit of a setup there. I had some ideas above my station, JP, that I haven't quite set up, some lighting and stuff that I'll figure out at some point for weekend show. You've had all kinds of illnesses, Savage, in the family. We unfortunately couldn't get a Spotlight in last night, but thought it would be a good opportunity to broadcast live here on YouTube on a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? For that, instead, I was able to do that and then and watch one of the worst international games in modern memory. I don't
even know what happened. I just assume Ireland lost. I'm sorry, JP.
Oh yeah,
it's just my assumption from the
Armenia,
from the group chat. You, Jordan, James, he didn't seem in a good mood, so I just guessed it went badly.
I mean, to the point where I felt compelled to text in to a live YouTube thing. I was with an ill child sat there, wanting every bone in my body just to put my fist through the fucking wall. And if I ever meet Josh Cullen of Burnley, I tell you what, it could easily kick off because I want to know why is he's honestly Danielson levels of performance last night from him. And Nathan Collins meant to be good. Is he fuck? Honestly, put him in a green shirt, plays like he's a fucking toddler. But anyway, I digress. So
I'm sorry, but you deserve better.
No, not really. I made what could only be seen as like just a supporting Ireland. You think, oh, okay, this would be a lot of fun. This a decade of this now, and it really hasn't been a laugh. Like 2016, the last time they qualified. But you showed me some. To say about your digs, you showed me some photos. Looks absolutely incredible. Is it the best podcast in Airbnb ever? That was the.
I hope so. We'll find out tonight if my internet holds up. The neighbors hold up. I'm in Chiang Mai. I've moved there. It's like a digital nomad like hub. Chiang Mai. That's how that's referred to in kind of like travel circles. But to be honest, like it's just purely that there's like if you walk down one of the streets here, you don't feel like you're in Thailand. You feel like you're in like some Brooklyn hipster part of New York or like maybe some certain suburbs in Toronto. That type of thing. It's like you can't go 2 minutes without bumping into a coffee shop and bumping into like a hipster outside that coffee shop working on the laptop. So like as a result, it means pretty much the internet here is blazing fast. I've got gigabit internet here, which is a change from our usual setups. The fella who's Airbnb on rent, he seems to be some kind of gamer. You can got a little cooling pad going with my laptop here as well. So hopefully it's gonna all work out. But yeah, pretty much I said that to Gareth. That's pretty much we planned this month, not to leave the flat. It probably will mean a few more podcasts in there as well. But yeah, fingers crossed it's all holding up, but it's good. It makes a big change, to be honest, from where I've been traveling. Obviously, I talked to you guys on Sunday on the pre-show. I was in Koh Samui this weekend with my mum and my stepdad. Said to you off air, I was felt like a 13-year-old again, having mum and dad pay for all my meals and sort me out and actually take me for like a few meals that will like cost more than $10 each, which just felt dirty to me, but it was their treat, so I couldn't say no. That was the deal, JP. They bought the meals, I got the odd beer, that type of thing. But I got to see how the other side live, mate. A bit of paradise this weekend.
It's amazing you're saying that about £10 meals when a £10 won't get you a meal in McDonald's in the UK at the minute. On there,
it's expensive to me now, mate. I've been away enough for that to be the case.
I mean, like the only time I think you would have been really taking the piss is if you'd asked your mum and your stepdad to take you to a laundrette and pay for you to do your washing. That would have been far, far, far too much for you to do. That would have been absolutely insane if that had been the case.
It was quite funny. I was staying in like it wasn't a hostel, but it was like a private room in a hostel. So I guess it was a hostel, but to me it felt like a really nice hotel. And then I went to visit them in like this 5-star lap of luxury with like sunbeds overlooking the beach and like a nice little pool behind, all kinds of great service and stuff. That was the only thing about it. It really like in a different way than this, it didn't feel like Thailand while I was out there. It very much felt like any big resort in kind that you could be absolutely anywhere in the world, full of Americans as well, as I talked about on Sunday, which I have a bit of a love-hate relationship while I'm traveling. But it was good to see. The one thing I will say, I didn't get a chance to mention to you on Sunday. Obviously, I hadn't got there yet, but they've been warning me. The fucking airport out of Koh Samui. It was literally it's like an open air airport. It's like literally like the like the baggage terminal and like all of like even like where your plane takes off from, all of it, like it's just like a hut. There's like a roof and there's like no windows and it's just literally outdoor. Like the first outdoor terminal I think I've ever been to in my life. Really, I kind of half expected the plane to turn up in like Flintstone style and have like a propeller and some legs sticking out the bottom. But there were still regular airplanes. To be honest, it was just everything else is outside. Even security when you go through there and they check your bags and stuff like that. There's a little telly on the screen that told you they were checking bags and you had to kind of stand in this little holding pen outside and then walk to the next bit. And then there was like getting, the way like the EasyJet and Ryanair thing about getting to your plane from the terminal. Usually there's like a little bus. This was like a little ghost train, like in an amusement park or something like that. We were all sat in the back. I don't know whether you've seen me pictures on Instagram. It was an experience. The flight was nice, but it was Jesus Christ. I've never had an experience like it.
And I wouldn't care, but if you're sticking people outside in huts and you got the baggage coming through, it pisses down there from time to time. So, like, it doesn't feel. It feels like if you're on a good day, absolutely grand. It'd be lovely. It'd be like Connor says here in the chat, where it says like an amazing experience and an attraction in and of itself. Yeah. Otherwise, if it's pissing it down, it would feel like hell on earth, wouldn't it? Bloody hellfire.
That's Thailand summed up, to be honest. So I've seen both sides of it this week, and obviously, as you did on the pre-show, I had a very fun and very Thai experience the night before. So I'm seeing all sides of the country, and like I say, I'm going to be set up here in Chiang Mai for the next 6 weeks or so. So expect probably more podcasts rather than late. I'm going to just try and get a load in the can, JP, while I know the internet and the going is good. So yeah, hopefully it's going to work out from a podcasting point of view as well.
Give me a call at 7 a.m. and go, come on, we're going to do Power Slam now while we're here, while we've got the chance to do it. I would say if your VPN is working, the iPlayer, which again, I don't think you need to worry about paying the license fee. He says this live on YouTube, which is immediately fraught with danger. Of course, Benno pays the license fee. Of course, we all do.
No, I pay for Mono Max, mate, which is the Thai equivalent of Sky Sports. £4 a month, get all the games. Fantastic stuff. Anyone wants to log in, give me a shout.
Fucking hell. That's insane, that. But there is on the iPlayer a documentary about the dark side of Thailand. That's out there.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
I did start watching it with the kids, and then it was just these basically the first 2 minutes are just like a load of prostitutes and these English lads hassling them, and it was like, I better turn this off. I can't see it getting like more family friendly from there. So at some point, probably after Alien Earth tonight, I might put it on. I said to Vicky, I was like, because it was the islands. I can't remember the name of it. I only saw the first two.
It's probably Koh Samui or maybe Koh Samet or somewhere like that. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it might have been. I know it's definitely going off to Koh Samui as well. But it all sounds incredible. Nice, and all sounds infinitely better.
Posh Benidorm in some ways, but even that's better than the UK. I had a great time in Benidorm the time I went to get to gets a bad reputation, but living the life out here. And like I say, feel refreshed. I've had a little bit of a nap to get myself ready for this tonight, JP, and get myself back on podcast schedule. So hopefully that will work out for the month. But as I say, we've got a lot coming up this month, Dealer's Choice month. Obviously, we had a great Dealer's Choice show on Sunday. Matty's Choice, we started in the year 2002 for a Survivor Series, which, to be honest, I wasn't expecting to be as fun as it was. We ended up having some. Turned out I've got nostalgia for the year 2002, JP. I didn't know what happens to the best of us. The older you get, the bigger the history gets, or something like that. A wise man once said. So yeah, that ended up being a whole load of fun. And obviously we got Garrett's pick coming up as well next weekend.
It is. Which way has he chosen? He decided to channel his inner JP and go with something that Benno's going to absolutely hate, which is Ric Flair in the 80s. So he's managed to select that. He's put the playlist.
The man of the 80s, or the man in his 80s. I'm not sure which. One or the other.
Well, I mean, who can tell really with him? He always wrestled like he was in the 1980s. But if I'm just bringing up the playlist now, just to see what Gareth has gone with, and I'm intrigued to know. Yeah, I haven't seen any of this yet as well. But we got Ric Flair versus Jerry Lawler from Continental, and that's in 1982. You've got Ric Flair.
Wrestling didn't exist in 1982. Are you on about? It started in 1984. Surely. Wow. Crazy.
83 Starcade. Come on. Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, which is Mid-South. And then Ric Flair, Ronnie Garvin. I know you're a big rugged Ronnie Garvin fan.
Of course.
Ric Flair, Ricky Morton in a cage. Ric Flair, Barry Windham, which I'm looking forward to, as well as Ric Flair, Terry Funk. And what I love about it in particular is the total runtime of little over 3 hours, 192 minutes of you as you've said, potentially watching the same match 6 different times.
We were going to do that. I could have just watched Royal Rumble 1992 3 times instead, and then I'm on to runtime. He knows what he's doing, don't he, Gareth? Like chat is saying there, like Ewan says, ironically for a vegetarian, Gareth is making us eat our greens. I mean, I know he's thinking he's going to try and change, I'd say Matty's mind to an extent, more my mind. We did this to ourselves, me, Matty, and Hamlet slaying some sacred cows last month when we were doing Bash to the Beach 96, and I had Garrett's ears burning, going, I'm going to teach those kids a lesson. I'm going to teach those kids about Prime Ric Flair. But like, all joking aside, I will go in with an open mind. I don't think I'm going to enjoy it. I think I'm gonna turn around and go, you know what, Simon, I apologize for having to go at Urban Wrestling Federation. What a fantastic time we had. I mean, it's tough. As I explained on the Hamlet show, I understand that I'm wrong. I understand that I am the child in the situation, like with my dad and my mum and my stepdad over the weekend. And I understand that, like, you know, Ric Flair's an all-time great wrestler. I'm just saying I've never really enjoyed Ric Flair outside of the 50-odd minutes that took place at Royal Rumble in 1992. It's an age thing, JP. You know, grew up in the 90s, grew up seeing the older version of Ric Flair, and then going back and seeing, you know, the previous version. He was the skinny old man turning up in the WWF in 1991 to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being educated as much as anything. It's not like I haven't seen some of these matches. I think I had the DVD set that the Fed put out in the early 2000s. I know that had a few of these on it as well, so I'm aware of the context. But yeah, this is the first time, you know, Clockwork Orange style have been forced, eyelids open, been forced to sit and watch it, and no, I won't be having a nap like Platt says in the chat.
Do you think this is like is Ric Flair like the Beatles of wrestling for you, in that you'll hear all this praise, but it's just completely just like, no, I don't want to know, I don't want to hear it. It doesn't. I think
that's what it is, you know. Yeah, maybe I've got that same relationship with it. Maybe that's where it comes from. Where I'm, like I say, having grown up in it in Liverpool, I'm resistant to it. It's just my way of being a little bit contrarian about it and pushing back. I don't know. I think he's in that category for me. But very clearly, like, it's a popular pick with the patrons, and people are excited to do the homework. So again, I know I'm wrong. I can accept that as a podcaster. There might be a story we're about to talk about in a second that might have those themes we will get to. But you know, part of growth, mate. So maybe I'll come out of it a gigantic Ric Flair fan. Maybe I'll become more steadfast in my takes on it. But we will get there. It'll be an education, and like the chat said before, JP, it's Gareth making us eat our greens this month, and not yourself.
It is. Trust me, honestly. I know. I do my pick next Saturday. A week on Saturday. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think that'll be a Saturday show. Yeah,
and I
cheese. I feel the same way about cheese that I do Ric Flair. There's an allergy in that. I'll think about some for the weekend. I'm basically going to make a list of nicknames for Ric Flair as well at the weekend. So look forward to that. But yeah,
well, the hair
cheese related, as Andy says.
The hair is very cheddar-esque, isn't it? It's a cheddar blonde that bloke.
Yeah,
goes
true.
With, as
Spartacus.
much as any old Spartacus. I'm looking forward to it.
Old
because
rubber
there's stuff. There's stuff on
There's
here.
two.
There really is. I think you called him Droopy Tits as well, didn't you? Or something along
Droopy Tits, there you go. Chicken bollocks, that was another one. Some easy ones.
All very offensive. Go down to YouTube. There's people tuning in for the first
Your
time.
nan's favourite wrestler?
I'm trying to think. My nan probably, my granddad would have liked Ric Flair. He would have fitted in with that World of Sport aesthetic. Maybe that's what I should choose, just to really seal the deal. To go with World of Sport for the for my pick when I choose that as well. But looking forward to this one. There's some matches I've seen. There's some matches I haven't seen. I'm happy to go back and revisit this stuff. And I think always in my case, you know, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, or people who've chosen a series of shit ones to do really can't complain about other people's picks. So I'm gonna leave that nicely to the side. And again, looking forward to it.
Definitely. And like I said, if you haven't listened to it already, it's Survivor Series 2002. Hell of a conversation. We talked the EWR. We talked all things 2002. Bit of saliva and bit of brand split and all those other fun things as well. So check that out. Look forward to Garrett's and look forward to JP's as well. But yeah, and like I say, we're in a bit of a weird situation, JP, in that like this isn't really a live. This isn't really a spotlight. It's kind of a mix of the two. So we are live here on YouTube. So if you missed it, set your notifications up. Get yourself subscribed there on YouTube, or become a member, as it looks like Rian just has in the chat. Thank you, Rian, for joining us there and becoming a YouTube member. You can do that from the low price of 99p, JP, and you even get a few of the pre-shows chucked in there as well. But obviously, like I say, that's where you can get those shows too. But as we talked about, so we are going to take this one a little bit more casually, JP, with it being a crossover and similar to a live, and maybe just do a bit of a catch up on some of the stories we haven't had another chance to talk about. And one such story, and we'll start with a couple of WWE notes before we get to quite a lot of AEW that I think we need to spend some time catching up on. We need to talk about in your words, JP, the megastar that is AJ Lee coming off last week's live. We did get some pelters in the chats with our conversation we had about AJ midweek last week. And again, it was another one of those, it's not us, it's the children who were wrong situations coming out of that. And I think people made some good points about it. You know, Sophia made some good points in the Discord about it, and you know, the types of fans that an AJ Lee will attract that isn't maybe in the wheelhouse of 40-something-year-old white men that we are doing these podcasts.
Well, unless you're CM Punk, unless you're this 40-something-year-old white man.
There's that. But we had, obviously we had other feedback as well from obviously Tom on the YouTube I can get into as well, Mike Hogan as well, kind of going, lads, I don't think you're quite registering the level of interest that is there with AJ Lee, or the level that she mattered to a certain type of fan in the 2010s. And to be fair to those people, I think that was maybe proven a little bit true. JP, do we have to eat some humble pie with obviously SmackDown did it for SmackDown these days, did a very good rating. Obviously they spent the entirety of SmackDown building up to the big segment with AJ Lee, CM Punk, Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins through the show, and it looks like the numbers rose through the show. Obviously, Cena's final SmackDown match will have helped as well, but particularly of note is in the 1849 demographic and the female demographic as well, as where SmackDown saw some gigantic improvements this week, JP. And yeah, as was pointed out to by a few people to us, that was kind of true of AJ Lee's first run in the company, at least as far as shifting merchandise and as far as how that fan interest from groups that are maybe a little bit underrepresented. But yeah, do those numbers change your mind at all, JP? You did ask in the chat and on the Discord, do we want to redo on our top 5 AJ matches? I can even be AJ Styles matches, but I don't know. There's something to that, JP, and very clearly was well received as far as the crowd went on Friday too.
So it's funny about this because I was really thinking about this, and obviously I've seen the segments that she was involved in on SmackDown and then her promo segment on Raw as well. And I actually thought we were kind of fair, because the thing that we were saying was not that she is bad. It's just that for the type of fan that we are, I think that AJ Lee doesn't have that same appeal as what it has to various other groups, whether it's people that are younger than us, obviously female as well. And at a time when women's wrestling was treated as obviously still as an afterthought, and here was someone who was involved at a high level and being able to do sort of certain things. Okay, I'm being asked to hold a baby here at this point in time while we're going live. So
speaking of the demographic,
speaking of the demographic, this one, massive fan of AJ Lee in there. Really wasn't expecting that to happen, but that's what happens if you go. We're live, folks. But I don't think that her earlier run was as good as you could reasonably expect of someone at that particular point in time. But the division was ridiculously weak, and she didn't even really feel part of it. She was more involved, as we said, in the Punk Daniel Bryan stuff, and she just doesn't connect with me, and that's a personal thing. That's not a slight on saying that she's terrible or anything else along those lines. She just doesn't connect necessarily for me. She can cut a promo. We don't know about what her work is like. I don't think that necessarily matters for the mixed tag at WrestlePalooza. And she can hold up her end at this point in time. I do think, and this is always the case with any of the returns we've seen from WWE, is that after this, after the pop, after the initial novelty, is she going to be around as a regular?
Yeah, I think something might have been unplugged there, JP. You can't hear me, JP. Right, I'll let him sort that out. But anyhow, yes, Brian says here the promo didn't sound great on Raw at times. I think we're back to solo Benno. This is a GRAPPL Live rather than a spotlight. Maybe Something's been pulled out there.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're a bit loud, JP, but I can hear you again.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. The reason is a baby decided to push the mic, which has got a very delicate wire in there as well. So I've come back in. What a great start. Cracking start.
This is why you should become a member, folks, on the YouTube and Patreon. Great stuff like this. But yes, like I say, Tom, I thought, like I say, the people who gave us feedback made good points. You know, Tom was making a lot of points about, you know, being a big star for a time as we lose JP again. And a good character performer who hadn't been seen on national television for a long time, and there were a lot of people waiting to see her back on there. He was higher than, you know, me and JP were on the idea of this dynamic with Punk, and this idea of doing something with Seth and Becky, which is a big part of the reason that I was groaning about this stuff. But yeah, I wasn't high on the initial angle. You know, it didn't really resonate with me. But again, Tom made good points about how, you know, they made very little mean a lot, and that was, you know, that's what WWE did well, you know, during the last 2 years when they were getting things over that AEW was struggling to do. So all those points taken, I went in to SmackDown and Raw with a bit of an open mind, and I think they nailed it. You know, like I say, Rian mentions there that that some of AJ's performance was a little bit ropey. I enjoyed it. I liked that, you know, specifically the Raw promo, that she felt a little bit off script. She felt a little bit like she was kind of shooting from the hip. She felt a little bit, you know, maybe raw and rugged around the edges, and a little bit like she was trying to find a way again. But it felt very different to the promos you normally see on Raw, especially, you know, with the current lot of WWE lot. She felt like she was a bit of a throwback there, and did remind me of, you know, that time where she did manage to get herself over in the 2010s, same as you, JP. I wasn't a huge fan, don't get me wrong, during that time, but she stood out because of performances like that, because of charisma, because of the way she carried herself. And, you know, like I say, I was high on that. There were parts of the SmackDown presentation I could have done without, you know, the whole skipping to the ring and being mentally unstable stuff. But like, that feels very 2010s in a different way, not necessarily a positive way for me. But again, the crowd reaction spoke for itself, and I stand by what we said. You know, that a lot of it is the new way. A lot of it is, you know, the idea of like these fans who it did mean something to are probably a very small percentage of WWE audience right now, but you know, the fans who are new to WWE, who AJ Lee was speaking to in a promo, see the other fans reacting, and then they react in kind. Whether, like Punk's debut, that keeps up for, you know, for the next couple of months might be a question. But I think the way they, you know, delivered this on SmackDown, the way they delivered this on Raw, I think there's every reason to think they could turn this into something, whether we believe those are real fans or not.
I mean, I think they can turn it into something for several. Again, it comes down. Some of this does come down to the work, and then it comes into how she's going to be positioned as a character beyond Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, who I don't enjoy in any way, shape, or form. This Becky Lynch
as a heel act, as a double act, and the, you know, at the chatter pointing out the daft, you know, slapstick comedy that you kind of get from them. That wasn't for me. Absolutely not.
No,
and it never
is. But I would generally agree about the promo. I thought like there were points where it was like it was slightly off kilter because you're just not used to it. You're not used to someone having the leeway to just sort of being able to sort of riff on stuff. And she reacted fine. I didn't think it was blow away. It wasn't like, you know, you're waiting on CM Punk returning after so many years and then comes back and did like that promo that he did on Rampage where you're sort of hanging on every word. I never felt like that. But then that's because I don't have that necessary level of connection. The rating for SmackDown is good. The only rating we have for Raw is weirdly it's a record low one, the one on Netflix of 2.4 million. I expect that to go up on the basis of this. It's how sustained this is going to be. And will it drive interest for WrestlePalooza? I'm sure that it will do. I don't still see though I don't see the legs in it. I don't see how that this lasts for a particular long amount of time. But then again, I don't think she would view as like she's going to be having a long extended run in WWE.
I mean, she signed a deal for one. Like that surprised me, to be honest. I thought this was going to be one kind of run of angles, maybe like a run, you know, for the tag feud, you know, Rhea and Aster were being set up for War Games, but I didn't think we'd get that far. I thought it'd be a tag match and then maybe a singles match with Becky, and then she's back to semi-retirement, whatever she's doing. I mean, she signed a long-term deal, so clearly I know, and it's a full-time roster deal as well, so clearly we're going to see it on TV over time. That might be a positive, that might be a negative, but yeah, she's clearly here for the long run.
Yeah, that's it. I see, and I'm not convinced over the long run because I don't think well, if we talk about the person who's booking it, if we're talking about Triple H booking it, I don't see him having the sort of subs of being able to come up with enough interesting storylines. There's the novelty value of her interacting with, say, a Rhea Ripley. There's the novelty value of her interacting with an Io Sky. I don't think she hasn't got their working chops in ring. I feel confident saying that. I know you asked me like top 5 AJ Lee matches. I don't think I can name one. But that's more
there. The Poison Rana lads are trying.
No.
They're doing like a show this week, best match ever, where they've had to pull some together. And yeah, I know Matty's a big fan of the Caitlyn feud, but outside of that, it is slim pickings. But again, it's the time, I think WWE put one of the Page matches up on YouTube. I can't imagine that has aged particularly well, but maybe she can work up to the level. It's not like Nikki Bella's been embarrassing herself, in this latest run, outside of a couple of matches, actually, I say that, at the pay-per-view. I think she can get close enough to the level that I think it'll be okay. And like say, you list a couple of programs you could do there. That takes you through to next year. So yeah, I'm going in with open mind on it. We'll kind of see. Ewan saying there, AJ versus Bailey could be a thing as well. And Platt saying there, he's going to put a cheeky bet on it for the Rumble at 21. Yeah, you could see them doing that with the husband winning and the wife winning. I wonder whether it should be more that, and it should be more pick your select moments to let us try and get it back up to the level over time, rather than have her on there every week. But we'll see.
That's the problem for me, is having her on there every week. Every week is far too much. That's far too much, and because then it becomes overkill, and then the sort of the love isn't there. And when that goes, like then what do you have? Like then they, we've seen it. They struggle. They struggle with things. They'll struggle with things to do, particularly if we're talking about how Triple H books the women's division and the faults that we've seen amongst that and the lack of prominence. That kind of has to change if you're bringing in AJ Lee and you're wanting to do something substantial with her. So, yeah, I remain skeptical, but I also am willing to say that, like, the big rating on SmackDown. I say big rating. It was up against football and stuff as well, wasn't it? It was up against Kansas City.
Very tough competition.
Yeah,
and on a bad run of SmackDowns, as far as numbers go.
Exactly. I think they've done like 1.1, 1.2. It'd been very sort of lackluster on for those. And you're going to get that short-term pop. But we've been down this road before. You get the short-term pop. You get that short-term reaction. And then it actually relies on, well, what positions are you putting them in? Are the storylines putting them in engaging? Because as we've seen with this WrestlePalooza card, you can have lots of, or we saw with even Clash in Paris, you can have lots of people who are nominally stars, but those stars, unless they're interacting with each other in some like in a meaningful way, in compelling storylines, don't mean shit. Sorry, Molly, swearing at her head, as he's going to run her into the front room to be with her mum now. So just 1 second, mate.
Yeah, I just think we shouldn't be negative for the sake of being negative. I think it's fair enough to kind of, assume WWE are going to drop the ball at times, and they often do, and they often have in the recent vintage. But I think we can only judge it based on what we see on TV and what actually happens. And we're talking 3 effective segments in a row. So we'll see which way it goes. We're going to talk as well, obviously, outside of AJ Lee. John Cena's retirement dates are out there now as well. We do know that there's only 7 dates left for John Cena to work with WWE. I did wonder whether we were going to sneak a few more in, or whether SmackDown was really going to be Cena's last date with WWE on a SmackDown Friday. But it looks to be the case. And that was, that probably speaks to, like you say there, JP, some of the undercooked nature of WWE's booking this year, that maybe you think they get a little bit more out of that they'd have promoted that a little bit harder, and it wouldn't have been something we all kind of figured out on the day was probably true based on the dates. But obviously, he's got a Raw coming up, he's got WrestlePalooza, he's going to be at Crown Jewel in Perth, Australia. Again, reflexively negative I am to hearing those phrases, those words together, Crown and Jewel, but Australia is a different thing, so we've got that coming up. Don't think I'll be making that trip. And we've got a Raw in Boston, which obviously a lot of people thought it might be that area where he'd be done, and then there's another Raw Survivor Series and Saturday night's main event, and then that's it, done. And obviously it's not been the most inspiring Cena's retirement run here, and obviously the stuff with Brock on SmackDown still makes me roll my eyes. And again, we can say the AJ stuff has maybe surprised me a little bit with how effective it's been. And again, maybe this is the real life story that kind of appeals to me as well. The idea of a coming back on her own terms. But the elephant in the room is also that the show that AJ Lee is coming back on is also the one that Brock Lesnar is coming back on as well, and that's obviously swallowing up at a lot of Cena's time right now too.
Do you know, I have to say, I look at this, it just makes me think what a bad job they've done with this. And I say a bad job in the way that this hasn't been something that seemed like, in terms of Cena's last run. I wasn't a fan of Cena back in the day. We've said this across many shows. But this is a guy who is, to the wider world, quite a big star. And he's a film star who's on the come up as well, who's going to be getting bigger and bigger roles, whether it's because of his Peacemaker role means he's going to be an active part of like the DCU and DC Comics films that are coming out in the future. And it should have really meant on so many more eyeballs going on the product than what it has done. And it hasn't. I just don't think it has. I mean, in terms of in terms of the impact, I mean, you always come back to the botched heel turn, which just appears to be completely dropped and not mentioned in time in there. But you're there looking at these dates and you're thinking, God, we're in the last 7 dates of this. And it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to extend it for another one. And then he's gone outside of appearing at WrestleMania, delivering an FU. And then that's basically it. He's then off at that point. So
I am surprised they haven't managed to stretch it out. I'm surprised that it's really happened. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel real. It feels like it's WWE. They're gonna work it. They're gonna have more dates. They're gonna say, well, he's back for one final year to WrestleMania, and then like kind of cash in with that. But maybe it's his acting plans. Maybe it's shooting schedules, things like that. Maybe it's just the man himself going, no, you had me for these dates. You fucked it for half the run, and this is what you've got. And that's it. We're done.
This is it. I mean, it's like the WrestlePalooza is really like, for me, it's like that's almost like it's the last big show, simply because of the ESPN factor, the novelty being on there. I think it's free for the first month or something like that if you take on like a longer subscription. We don't have these problems outside of the US where you just go Netflix, and that's going to be a whole different entity. See what happens there. His last match is at Saturday night's main event, which is going to be on Peacock, which seems like a service that isn't really going to be long for this world. Wouldn't surprise if it's swallowed up in whatever corporate conglomerations decide to come along in the meantime. And Survivor Series, which has nominally been part of the Big Four and really is down into 6th, if we're including like Elimination Chamber and Money in the Bank as having sort of more kudos these days. And, you look at that and you think, oh, and then he's just gone then at that point. And really, what have you achieved? Like what have been the big substantial moments? It feel like we've had it, which was the heel turn, and that's going to be remembered for, it was in the moment, fucking hell, that's shocking, and then they fucked it afterwards.
Yeah, there's been, I mean, again, like we lost a lot of time, but I still thought they'd make time to do like some more interesting things. Like Rob Van Dam said this weekend, and in an interview that there was a plan for him and Cena to. I mean, he says a lot of stupid stuff lately. So whether I believe that or not is another thing. They could. I'm surprised he put a phone call into Kurt Angle, get him on SmackDown to do like a full circle moment. From Cena's debut. Yeah, just felt all a bit like unspecial, and I can't really. Obviously, AJ Styles is another one. I think clearly AJ wants it. Clearly Cena wants it. I don't think we're going there. I don't know if you heard Michael Cole's horrendous calls on SmackDown as Cena was doing tributes to different people, and he just didn't recognize any of the moves. He thought the spear that was clearly a nod to Edge was a tribute to the big dog. Didn't recognize it. A few interesting spots in there as well. It's almost like he's not been calling this stuff for the last 20 years or so. But Cena's having to shoehorn that stuff into his matches at this point because they're obviously not going to give it the time to do this stuff. And obviously AJ's busy doing his this is the other AJ, the male AJ, doing his work shoot business with mentioning Gallows and Anderson and ad breaks and stuff, which I can't believe anybody bought, because like there's literally a YouTube video. They made a YouTube video out of it and put it on the WWE YouTube. That tells you that it's a work, folks, and it's very much not a shoot. But he's busy doing that right now.
Golden rule: if it appears on screen, it's a work.
Yeah,
it's bollocks. So, like, the idea of this being... And I even took a lot of the AJ stories that had come out about him doing the feelers amongst the convention circuit, and that's just, able to do the stories about AEW. I don't expect any of those things to happen in any serious way. WWE is going to be where he ends up retiring for that. But that kind of like, I mean, Gallows and Anderson are gone. I was just like, good. Like, why would have been? They were stealing a living for the longest amount of time.
Rev Pro, they've got a weekend coming up.
They have. I think they're over twice for Rev Pro for that. And do you know what? That's their level. Do those indie shots, get their paydays, but they don't need to be necessarily on TV. I saw this and I was like, it's another one though.
Yeah,
we've had Wrong Killings. What was the one after Wrong Killings that we had? It was the I can't remember now off the top of my head. We've had another like kind of work shoot in the meantime, haven't we? That they've done. And I'm
you mean with Karrion Kross?
Yeah, with Karrion Kross. And now we're doing it with AJ Styles. And it just, again, shows you the sort of creative deficit here of like, we're going to go down this route of, no, he's shooting. This is real. And it's during a commercial break. And you're like, oh, fucking hell. Don't need to do with that stuff. But yeah, it is. And obviously Seth Rollins. Like, and we've had that. And all of this stuff is probably just, it feels like, we're getting an episode we're getting an episode of Unreal with AJ Styles. Of like, will he leave? Will he not leave?
The Cena run was a bust on that. I wonder if they'll go, after all. How are they going to explain that we just decided randomly to make him a babyface again? Is there going to be any footage of Cena going into Triple H's office going, this is fucking crap, mate. Can we do something else? Probably not. No. I can't imagine that's in there.
It'll be a group of the same fellas who were sat in there before talking about what a brilliant idea this is. And Bruce Pritchard talks shit and defends the whole thing like it was always the plan all along, because they can't. The idea of any self-reflection is just like that. Just doesn't happen in that company whatsoever. So yeah, I saw that and I just sort of shook my head, and I was like, and so what? The problem is you've done this so many times. Why would anyone believe you? They've cried wolf on this stuff now like 4 odd times, and it doesn't mean anything. And even when they bring Karrion Kross back, that won't mean anything either, because the same people who are into them will just have forgotten about him just as quick and latched onto something else that seems inexplicably
I think he's
weird.
really gone. I think I'll buy that one now. I think that's a shit.
Okay.
I think he's actually gone. I think. We'll see. I mean, there's no money in the work now. Maybe there's money in a Rumble pop or something like that, and they say it was all planned after all. But yeah, I think I'm leaning towards maybe that being something of a shoot. But
TNA, possibility of AAA. That would be, they would be the ones for me.
Well, outside of that, the only other stuff I wanted to mention, if we'd done a spotlight yesterday, was obviously Raw moving to it 7 p.m. The fucking cowards doing a runner to an earlier slot, obviously with Monday Night Football, obviously being a very big thing. And like I say, Raw rating doesn't look particularly great this week, but they don't care because it's Netflix and they can fake the numbers and drive Dave Meltzer mad with their made up statistics and made up rounding out as far as the mats go. So that can make it look even better.
That was a really funny one. When I saw that story, I thought what they're trying to do is, because the way they work out the numbers, isn't it? That they basically it's reliant on like the amount of people, and they sort of divide it by 2. I can't tell you whether there's a whole story about Nielsen and the way they're changing their rates. But I know for Netflix the way that they do it, and it felt like artificially inflate that first hour, and then hours 2 and 3 when it's being slaughtered, and they do also, people are going to turn off and then possibly tune back in and see hours 2 and 3 before Monday Night Football is on. Like that, it just feels like a way of artificially inflating the numbers, which isn't the worst business decision in the world. It makes no odds to me, but like as far as like, it feels like that's really what the game is here, moving it earlier. Why don't they just move it?
It's smart, to be honest. I think they should.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst move in the world for them to do, because that's the problem. Is the NFL is such a juggernaut, and I'm stating the bleeding obvious here, but it's such a juggernaut that they can't compete. And Netflix are going to be like, obviously Netflix have their own deal with the NFL as well, and they'll be thinking, well, we don't want too much of a clash in terms of timing. So if we can get something out of it, and then people are going to tune over to Monday Night Football, and then maybe go back, that appears to be the kind of like their thinking on this. And do you know what, they should just stick to 7 p.m. for that, because 8 to 11, fuck me, that's a slog.
Well, as we talked about with wrestling and with AEW, we've got a few things to talk about here. Earlier is better, and obviously we got it on the live last week. breaking news was obviously the pay-per-views moving to the pay-per-view for at least All Out moving to 3 p.m. Eastern time, which means an 8 o'clock time for the UK, which meant we're celebrating. We got a bit more on details on how those pay-per-views will be put out. Obviously, the Mac story came a little bit after we recorded. JP, I'm sure you've got takes on that with the discounted pay-per-views there. But while we're talking TV ratings, we do need to start when we talk some AEW. And again, subject we probably would have dealt with in a lot of detail and a full proper spotlight was the ratings over the last couple of weeks, especially obviously Collision died to death. And yes, there's real American TV sports reasons why Collision died to death last week. There's other reasons why, the numbers are falling over time. That's just, a story for American TV across the board, and wrestling continues, to not buck the trend, but, number one on cable, as a phrase you often heard from us over the last couple of years, or at least top 10 on cable seems to be the conversation we're all having as well. So I think we take these numbers with a bit of a pinch of salt these days and maybe don't overanalyze them, but it's worth mentioning because I have been surprised the level of analysis maybe this has been getting, and some of it feels a little bit like, and I've said it on our shows before, I have felt like these AEW residencies, which need to happen, they need to happen because they can't run half empty arenas, the optics aren't good, the sound of it isn't good, and broadly speaking, because of the situation that they've put themselves in as far as selling tickets, it's better to downgrade. That doesn't mean there aren't negatives, and I think I've been consistent in pointing out those negatives. I think, obviously, like we say, the last run of shows, the last residency, we got towards the end of that, and it was kind of like, bit sick of Chicago now, bit sick of looking at this ballroom. It was nice the first week, and then, by the time the third or fourth week came, you could start to see the paint thinning on the walls, and you could start to kind of hear that it was a little bit smaller. I feel like that happened a lot quicker with the ECW Arena this time round, and like I say, something I felt week one felt low rent, felt like, I think I've seen other people point it out, but I think it felt a bit like MLW, felt a little bit like TNA, it felt a little bit like watching a company much smaller than AEW. And again, people might be out there thinking, well, they can't win, can they? You give them grief if they run a big empty arena, and you'll give them grief if they run a small place. But yes is the answer to that. We will, because that's the situation that AEW, because of poor booking over the last, couple of years or so, obviously with that trend being booked this year, but these things take a while to turn around. They put themselves in that situation, and there are going to be negatives, even if overall I support the positive of moving to the arena. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go with what everyone seems to be pointing out, and that that is the reason for the low ratings. That is the reason Dynamite did an all-time bad number last week. But do I agree with them? And again, maybe it is just kind of, proving my own point. Do I agree with them that it's a factor? Do I agree with that it's part of it? Yes. Do I agree that AEW has cooled down a bit since, the peak of All In this year? Yes. And as we talked about in this podcast, some of that's inevitable too. But yeah, it feels like maybe the numbers are catching up a little bit. It feels like maybe part of it, again, is the real sport competition and the other things going on. But yeah, I think there's some legs to the story, JP, even if I feel like it's maybe being a little bit overblown in some circles. What is your reaction bit to this one?
I think the mistake was doing a residency straight after a residency, because it was like residency, Forbidden Door, residency. And the problem was, and I was less... The Chicago one, it was too long. It was like 3 weeks, and that was just too long for necessarily a residency. I think a 2-week maximum window is really what you can get away with. The problem with the ECW one, for me, 2300 Arena, is they went in, and the first time I was like, we're going to do a setup that's not what NXT did when they went there, which was big LED screens, and it just looked effectively like Full Sail. So it still had a bit of a production sheen on it. And instead, it's like, no, we're going to try and sort of go into the roots of what it was. And it's like, well, that's fine for a one-off, but you can't do that over what will be 3 weeks. Is it 3 weeks of TV that they're doing there? Because then it just, I looked at this and I was like,
all the collisions, all the Dynamites, all the ROH, including the pay-per-view. Yeah.
It feels like I'm watching them at a very low rent performance center. And like you say, it feels very TNA. It feels very MLW, and it doesn't.
I was listening to no offense to the JP News stuff, but I was listening to Mike Sempervive over the weekend, like when I was flying back over to here from Koh Samui, and like they play like, they were telling the story, the rating. Oh, I think they were actually telling the story of like something that happened on Dynamite, and they played a bit of audio from it, and it was like, oh, that does sound echoey. Oh, that does sound a bit shit. It's not just, when you're watching it, it looks a bit bad. It sounds bad too. You can hear the walls, you can hear the cavernous walls in the place. It's part of like, mainstream wrestling presentation is you want it to sound and look good, and I'm not sure they can quite pull it off in this place.
No, I don't think they can. And the problem is we've got still a fair amount of TV to come from there. And then if you're just watching it, just in terms of the optics, because it doesn't look particularly great and it doesn't feel very like it feels very low rent. I think as a TV viewer, talking about like people going in, it doesn't feel like, well, this is particularly important because look at where this is being filmed. And if you're coming off the back of another, and this has been the problem, I think, since All In, and we've spoken about this, you've touched upon it tonight as well, is that it has sort of cooled off because we've gone from residency to residency. And while residencies, and I've been a big proponent of them moving to smaller venues, and I think in the main, it's been a good business decision. I think residencies, it's just a sensible way of managing your costs, makes sense in order to do it. Like, you do the Hammerstein, wouldn't you? Which at least has a bit of like kind of like theatrical. And
Probably not now, no. Like, look at it, like it's all painted grey. I think you'd have the same problems.
Oh, well, yeah. I hadn't noticed the paint that they had on that, but I can see your point.
It looked like shit the last time we saw it, with GCW running it and such.
But this is I think these are the things that kind of eat into it, and because of, and Jordan says it here in the chat. If you wanted to make this look more spectacular, I know I've not focused necessarily on the ratings and on like where they're going. Why aren't they doing these kind of like shorter international tours? I know we're going to talk about AEW in the UK in a little bit, but like it's like that's where they should be going if you're wanting to kind of have like sort of slightly bigger arenas and a more excited crowd. Why aren't they doing some things like that instead of like what it feels like going to a market and sort of just like running it almost to death? Or just even maybe it might be if like, right, we're just going to stay in Pennsylvania for 2 to 3 weeks, and so the transport and moving around all of the logistical stuff, that's the stuff that actually would make maybe a bit more sense. I think in terms of the ratings, it feels like, and I remember saying this with AEW at the start of the year, it's like they need to go on like a run of a year where it's like the product is really good. And I think we had that for effectively for the guts of like 7 months.
Yeah.
And then it feels like most of the year.
There's some rough parts at the start of the year. We kind of all moved past them, brushed past them. And there were some rough parts in the midst of when it got good. It was like, it's all good except for, a lot of it was Death Riders. But yeah, for the most part, it's been good. And I think that's the thing, like I keep saying with, the build to All In. You want to peak for All In. That's your WrestleMania. You want to have all your shit, all your ducks in a row. And they did. And you also can't maybe do that 12 months out of the year. There does need to be like a down period. There does need to be, a resetting of things. And that happened, in the run to Forbidden Door. It just feels a little bit like that's running through to All Out. And I think part of that as well, like I say, while a lot of people are putting it down to the residency, and I think Meltzer has been a big proponent of that. And I want to go with that because it's how I've felt too. I think you can't avoid the fact that we're missing 2 or at least 3 now of AEW's big stars. Ospreay and Swerve not being on the show. I think Meltzer said that as well. Maybe they're a bigger deal than we thought. And that again makes it feel like maybe this little run of TV is missable. Maybe it's a subconscious thing where it doesn't feel quite as important because the important guys aren't there. Even Kenny, we had another one where he's come back, and obviously I'm guessing they were trying to play, smart with it, and obviously put him in matches and situations like the multi-man on Dynamite last week, and then obviously the cage match on the pay-per-view of Forbidden Door, where he didn't have to do too much because, he's still not 100% back, but still, it does feel a little bit like they're not the most economical with the dates they have Kenny for. He's off again now, he's not going to be around for the build to All Out, and obviously they did the injury angle last week on Dynamite to write him out of things, but that's another, important character's not around. I think that's what it feels like right now. It does feel a little bit like you can feel, the lack of presence maybe of those big stars on the shows.
You can. This is the problem, and that it's like an unholy combination. Is you have this kind of lull, and you're missing a few people into the mix. And is it Kenny's out till January? I think Swerve's out till January. Obviously Ospreay in terms of the time he's going in for surgery. So the earliest you would realistically expect him back is going to be what, April, May?
Yeah.
We're getting into that kind of time frames. That's a long period of time. The way, and I'm going to talk about this, but the way that Kyle Fletcher has just been sort of shoehorned into this position, which if it was happening organically, you'd be fine, but it just feels like he's there as a stopgap measure because we need
I think it's just
someone
lack of options, though, isn't it? Because, like, who else could it be? Who's like somebody pointed out on the Discord, like, who are the other heels that could be in this position to it with Hangman Page? It's not a long list, is it?
No, it isn't a long list. And I think that's...
We've done MJF already, you know?
Yeah. I mean, unless you were wanting to go into face versus face, does it need to be a heel? In some ways...
But who would the faces be?
I would have preferred it if it had been Mark Briscoe. Like, if they had actually decided to change tack and gone Briscoe Hangman and actually just have a face versus face match and not be so caught up in like you need a strong...
I think Mark Briscoe's too damaged goods over time. Like, no one would buy that with in a million years. And I think Mark Briscoe's superpower is being damaged goods, but also being sympathetic enough to get over. Does that dynamic work with another babyface?
Well, I think he could have... There was a point in time when he did the Players Tribune video that I think there was like... they could have caught upon this. They could have like created this... In some ways, like him and Eddie Kingston, they're like these sort of organic, realistic characters they could have sort of shoehorned into it. But it's not there. I mean, Chris mentioned there in the chat, the big talk was the fact that Wardlow came back, got injured in the angle at Forbidden Door, and it seemed like he was the one who was apparently going to be positioned into
that. Kyle Fletcher 10 million times over Wardlow being in that position. Like, it's not 2022 anywhere.
He would have had to lose. So then it would have been like, well, what is really the deal with that? I mean,
that's a TV match to me, that Hangman Page beats Wardlow on Dynamite one week or Collision one week.
Here's the other thought as well. Do you need to have a Hangman world title defense at All Out? Is that something you need to actually have?
It seemed like they were building to a tag match,
Yeah, like I would be fine. I mean, you're running 12 pay-per-views. You don't always have to have the champion defending on each one of those pay-per-views. You don't have to have 12 title defenses. You know, instead they could have done around that. And this is where you probably get into the perhaps some of the creative problems. Is it's mixing up that formula from time to time. It's worked. Things have worked for so let's just say 5 months of this year has been like really good TV, really strong booking. Once they moved past Moxley and Cope and that stuff, and it had been strong. And then since then, there has been obviously this lackluster period. And this is
a rebuilding period, I'd say, because I think both things can be true. Because I'm all right with the Kyle Fletcher match. I just think both things are true. I think you're putting Kyle Fletcher in that position half out of necessity, half because he's a bit of a hot hand. He's been moving up the card, and he's in a position where you can get away with having him be a challenger of the month for Hangman Page in the lack of other options. But it can also be true that it's very plain for everyone to see we're in a rebuilding period, and Kyle Fletcher isn't quite at that level yet, even if we can all see the potential for him to get there. I think both are accurate.
And in terms of the heel side,
and this is how you get there too, isn't it? This is them experimenting. This is them doing something different.
I mean, and the problem is you probably can't do Takeshita because of the G1 and the fact he's taking on Zack and stuff like that.
I'd take that though. No.
You can't have. But if it had been Takeshita versus Hangman, I would have been absolutely fine with that. And obviously, you would have lost, and maybe it would have been miscommunication from the Don Callis family building up the idea of Takeshita turning face at that stage. But I think, unfortunately, that's where you get into sort of interpromotional politics and the fact that they're having to keep him strong in there as well at the same time. There are people who've done a good job, like a really good job with, like people like Bandido. The problem is, like you say, a lot of them are on the face side, and I like Bandido, I really do. I think there's been a really good job, and I'm not saying that you stitch him up into a main event, but there is, you lose that many people in your sort of main event mix. We know we spoke about almost SmackDown 6X of these are the 6 guys that you're going to go with. They're going to be at the top of the card, and they've lost half of them, all in the space of like.
And like I say, it's a time where you could probably have done with Kenny with Boots on the Road. That's my only disappointment. Like I say, I don't want to. I'm all right with it. It doesn't sound like you are, but I'm all right with it. I like Kyle Fletcher as like that's an opponent for Hangman. But I did think they were going another route. I did feel like, the heat angle in last week's Dynamite was, okay, there we go, getting Kenny and Kyle, because it'll be another way to elevate him before he gets to a match like this. But again, it was a reason to write Kenny out of it. But these are things you've got to do, when you're in that position. But again, it's also going to be true that when you're doing a lesser main event like this, when you're doing a lesser world title program, when it does feel, lesser all round because of that lack of star power, the knock-on effect is probably going to be the viewership. So I do think that's going to be key to this too.
It is, and maybe, and this is probably the real test of Carl Fletcher. Isn't the build to All Out? It's actually the match itself. It feels
like his cold day in hell, doesn't it? Like when Steve Austin had that match with Undertaker, tail end '97 that me and Hamlet about to get into, and it wasn't quite the crowning, but it was, a little bit of a tease of what you might get in 1998. Yeah. Not that he's going to be Steve Austin. Let's not put that on his shoulders, but you know what I mean.
But if he has that killer match and he proves like, okay, he can hang in that sort of main event situation, although I don't think he'll be main eventing the show. I think we're going to end up with Cage and Cope as being like the main versus FTRs potentially being the main event, which maybe I'm wrong on this, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's the route they go down. But if he has that killer match on the pay-per-view and really stands out, as he has done whenever he's been asked and put into these positions, that would be the thing then from that you go, oh, actually, this guy is, like, for all intents and purposes, a main eventer. I just hate the idea of your secondary champion who's just won the belt. Like, I like the idea of a secondary champion who's had it for 6 months at least, perhaps even going up to a year, then being put into that position. And then you think, oh, okay, this guy's earned the right. In the same way that when they used to do ranking lists in the APTA mags, the number one contender was always like the IC champion, because it was just like, well, yeah, they've got the secondary title. They should always be someone who is like this viable threat. But it feels like it's far too soon. But do you know what? He's been put in these positions before. I just I'd have faith in the match itself, but it's not going to show itself at the box office or ratings in the sort of like near future.
Yeah, but again, lack of other options. Maybe it's the perfect time to do it. Maybe the numbers will be bad regardless, just because of the period we're in. Got a question there in the chat there from Piers Wrestling. Hey guys, with Blake Monroe turning to the dark side, did she? This is a theory. Do you think Blake turned evil, seeing his own blood and having flashbacks to Vietnam and PTSD of AEW Revolution 2025?
See, this is going on for something that happened at NXT, which isn't something that I ever spend any time whatsoever sort of going around to watch. So it's amazing how little I think of sort of like Blake Monroe. She's just part of the furniture in NXT, which is a really quite scary thing how quickly they've done that. Did she bleed last night? I have to say I haven't even looked at the results. I'll save that for the JP News dump tomorrow. That'll be the time when I'll focus on a bit of Blake Monroe. But up until that point, yeah, maybe that is the case. I want to say flashbacks to Vietnam. If the only person having flashback to Vietnam is you, Benno, because you've been there more recently than the rest of us as well.
Flashbacks to cheap coffee. It's very different, but there we go. I live in the land of cheap coffee, so it works out quite well. I mean, yeah. Any other thoughts on the max numbers? Obviously, we're talking some AEW. Sorry, being $39.99 over on Max for them to buy the pay-per-view if you're already a Max subscriber. Obviously, we talked the 3 p.m. move last week. Triple H does say it was an ESPN call for WrestlePalooza to be going head-to-head with All Out, and it was nothing to do with him and nothing to do with WWE. Of course, it wasn't your line, big nose cunt. But do you think that'll have like any kind of impact as far as like bringing attention over with obviously the ESPN competition going on in the other channel?
The issue is for HBO Max, if you look at what I think the overall subscriber numbers are around 20 million, is quite low on the totem pole for the big sort of streaming services. So I don't think that it carries the same amount of cachet there as well. By all accounts, what they're going to be doing is broadcasting it in HDRF10 and Dolby Atmos as well. So the idea is that the production values are going to be apparently really, really good. It obviously, if you're HBO, this was baked into the cake when they paid so much money, Warner Brothers Discovery, for having the rights to AEW. What were they looking for? They were looking for, in terms of being able to kind of get people signing up to HBO Max, which, don't get me wrong, HBO still produce some really fucking good stuff. I haven't seen Task, which is something that debuted on there from the makers of Mayor of Easttown in there as well. But that is going to be a really sort of, if you're Amazon Prime, you're going to be, or Amazon, you're going to be quite annoyed at the fact that you're going to have this discounted version of it. You've just set up this deal with AEW, and you've got this discounted price that you've got for HBO Max that's sort of $10 cheaper than what they would be charging in there. I don't know if you're, I don't know what impact it's going to have, because it never feels like HBO Max has that bigger sort of impact there as well. And like I say, you've got the risk of, it's the one partner they have for pay-per-view in Amazon that maybe you don't want to piss off, that maybe you want to keep as a viable option there as well. And then how sustainable is HBO Max for doing live streaming sports? I mean, it's been a long time since they were doing live boxing, and I know that was their part of their bread and butter for the longest time in like the early 2000s. But yeah, it's also not enough of a price drop, I think, for getting people to go, oh, I must sign up. Why? What do you save? $10? If you were doing the pay-per-views at, say, $20, I think that might have meant something if you did it as a short-term deal. I don't think it's going to eat into ESPN, because I think ESPN just has that brand recognition. HBO does, but in a very different way, into a very different audience from what ESPN does. So I just think they've kind of ballsed up somewhat on the price. I don't think that, like, I just don't think of it as a substantial enough discount in order to get people going, well, I must get HBO Max because I'm going to save myself $10.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, they're not quite. It's America, isn't it? So you're never going to get Triller prices. That we're very lucky to get.
Spoiled.
They do the same thing, though. You got an AEW Plus subscription, you get that even cheaper, or Gareth gets it even cheaper if we're all honest with ourselves. But I mean, speaking of which, obviously the 3 p.m. move's going to be fantastic for us, for you guys out in the UK. I count myself in it as well, because it means that a better start time for me as well. But speaking of the UK, obviously the other positive news we've seen come from AEW over the last while seems to be the shifting of tickets for the shows around Christmas this year. JP, Manchester now at the Co-op. They're set up for 10,257, which obviously can be improved upon. We've distributed 6,546 tickets so far. Leaves 3,700 there for Christmas presents and other such things over the coming months. And again, like I say, I'm sure they'll be expanding that capacity. And yeah, as far as Cardiff goes, a little bit on the lower end, but I think maybe to be expected. We have a first count of 2,260 set up at the minute for 4,125, and according to AW ticket maps over here on Blue Sky, where apparently I've got a DM that I haven't read. I need to check what that is. There's a maximum setup of 4,270, as I say, based on obviously the previous dates there as well, but. Yeah, obviously tickets moving, JP, and it's going to be interesting to see on the road to eventually all in next year in our fair country.
I think 3 months. Looking at the Co-op number, I think the Co-op number is actually good for a starting point. If they get over 10,000 for a Wednesday just before Christmas, in a market that they haven't run, but this is a massive arena. I mean, what is it? The total amount of seats on there is like 18,000, and then they'd probably be able to squeeze in a few more around there as well. Like, the idea that they're comfortably going to get to 10,000, because remember, we are quite a way away from this. I think that's a really good start. Now, I've heard that there was the initial rush and then it slowed down. You'd like to think that would build up over time, over the next over the next couple of months in particular. They'll be able to get up to 10,000 and then hope for a push. Because you got to remember, like, it's not like Forbidden Door did 17,000 off the gate. Like, that took its time. It dragged its heels for a while when it was on sale, and it's just before Christmas, as you've mentioned. So I think that is going to end up possibly doing. If I was going to guesstimate, I'd guess around 13,000, which is not to be sniffed at. 13,000 is really, by obviously modern day. This year Dynamite numbers is, God, they're not going to do much bigger than that, are they? The Cardiff number, I mean, it's Collision, which probably isn't necessarily like, going to fill people with as much excitement there as well. They'll do this. They'll do the setup of 4,000. I'd imagine in the end it will tap out around 5,000. So what did it do last time? It was around 6, but they badly priced it. They priced it really high, and then they ended up having to kind of do some various sort of cost measures there as well. I think in the end that they'll do all right with these, but okay, I'll be boring about this, and I'll say about the way that they do their advertising and their marketing in the UK, and the fact that perhaps they don't use the ITV relationship to the way that they should do in order to be able to shift a few of these. But I think the Dynamite number is something that if they look at and go, well, hang on, we're doing like over 10,000 here for a Dynamite. Like, why don't we come over and do a bit of a European tour? I mean, obviously you've got the pay-per-view there as well, but that's, I wanted them to do more of an extended tour rather than just the 1 week we're going to go to the UK. Because again, it feels like they're a bit more scared to kind of really dip their toe in the water.
They're being cautious.
Same with Australia, isn't it? Where it's just like it's Sydney and it's Brisbane, but it's not like it's an extended tour. And that's a long way to go for just like a week's worth of TV.
Yeah. Well, like I say, overall positive for me. Solid numbers, and I think the Ogdens obviously have got their tickets in there based on the chat there. Done their trick of getting back row seats in block 300 open to be moved up.
Good.
Everyone copy them, do that. That might well work out. Or just find the Ogden section as Simon says there as well. But yeah, as Ramin says there, you don't have to do UK. You could do Paris, Berlin. You could do other areas as well. I'm actually half surprised. I mean, and again, maybe the numbers aren't there. When they look at where they got clearance for TV and where Triller does good numbers, maybe those types of things don't make sense. But I think it's quietly positive, and obviously I think the thing about it is, I think whether they lean on ITV or not in the lead up to it, I think they're hopefully going to lean on this tour and lead on this focus in the UK to give it the hard sell for all-in weekend next year. And yeah, quite a few of our group have taken my advice, JP, and looked at booking Premier Inns and all kinds, because booking is open now, folks, as far as booking your accommodation for next year for all-in. And I think a few more people looked at booking some stays at Wembley across the weekend, as the news did come out over the weekend that RevPro, their 14-year anniversary show this year, is going to be held at the OVO Arena at Wembley Arena. Let's just call it that. And obviously, your hello Wembley jokes can apply here as well. But yeah, that's going to take place on the Saturday, August the 29th. Remember when we were all in the Electric Ballroom and we all did somersaults over a certain company announcing they were going to be running Wembley Arena, JP? But there we go. RevPro are now going to be working in those hallowed halls coming up, and obviously gigantic moment for RevPro, and obviously makes it as we always expected, as much a destination weekend as it always is with these big weekends, as you saw with Forbidden Door. And I think we're going to see a lot more people looking at those hotels in the immediate Wembley vicinity for both Saturday and Sunday. It's just whether RevPro can eclipse the previous numbers, like I say, certain companies did at the arena.
God, that'd be great. The number they've got to aim for is 4750, I believe.
Is that the number? Okay, exactly.
They got a plaque for it before. I didn't go to the Wembley Arena show. At that point in time, I was.
Oh, you meant there? Joe was there. I wasn't sat with him, but I was the other side. Yeah. I got to take a look.
And he had to leave early.
I saw Will Cooling. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was that one, wasn't it? I had to leave early too. Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, with the Tyler Bate Walter main events. Yeah, Jesus.
Oh, was it the tables match with Eddie Dennis and Mark Andrews? Was that the thing?
That was on that. Yeah, that was earlier in the show. Yeah,
but there was like all manner of like massively overrunning for it. I mean, fair fucks to them. It's a big statement running Wembley Arena, and it's a big sign of credibility as well. Do I think they can do 5,000 for this? I think they can do. I think there's a lot of factors that kind of need to go their way in order for that to be the case. It's what talent, first of all, what of their current talent can they hold on to in that time? He's going to be still a regular at that point. I'd say looking at a Leon Slater. Yeah. It feels quite hard.
He's on the poster.
Yeah, he is on the poster, but it feels difficult to me to imagine him being there in like a year's time. Like, that doesn't feel like maybe that could necessarily be the case. They would need to have like a sort of really strong run of creative. you need to have a main event that sells. It's what people can you get from a New Japan? Can you get from and again talking about modern day, current day New Japan? Like Jesus Christ, you get Zach, but is he as much of a ticket mover because he is over on a reasonably semi-regular basis? He pops in. Is he gonna pop enough numbers there as well? Who are you gonna get from AEW to be able to use who isn't perhaps being used?
You'd think there'd be a few lens for this one of all.
You'd
And
hope
I
so.
know nothing about it, but I assume there's been some kind of AEW has maybe helped with getting Wembley Arena. That's just my guess. I could be completely wrong. Andy Quilden did tell us on record that RevPro is not funded by AEW, and actually got picked up by a few news sites. I'm not saying such things, but I imagine there's more of a synergy there with AEW for this weekend than ever.
Yeah, and there should be, and I'd be an advocate of them having a few people on loan for quite a substantial amount of time so you can work them into storylines so the matches that are on actually mean something rather than a guest appearance. I don't think guest appearance stuff necessarily sort of cuts the mustard, but people who are into the mix who you actually think, oh, okay, that seems like an interesting match. I mean, there's always that sort of feeling of fear because if you look at like what they've done for, say, the Copper Box shows, and admittedly, that's been on sort of a different part of London to Wembley. You're talking about East London for Copper Box and Northwest London.
Don't I know it? Out on an Uber, mate. That's what it's talking.
Mate, it's miles away. So
it's easier getting across Central Bangkok when I was meeting Hamlet the other week. Jesus.
The hope would be that if AEW do something around like 50,000, let's just say, if they manage to achieve that, and you've got a captive audience who are booked in around Wembley, are they going to say, yeah, I'll come along to Wembley Arena as well? Because it's right next to the stadium, obviously, as you can imagine for this. It's a big enough venue, isn't it? I mean, this is something that it feels like it's fraught with risk, but then they've always been quite good at managing risk for Rev Pro. I just think it's almost like, for European wrestling, if this show does really well, given what Rev Pro's ethos is, I think it is one of those things where it's generally good for like sort of wrestling within the UK if they can do over 5,000. And I think that would be the absolute upper limit of what they could do. If they could do more than that, then that is spectacular.
It's going to depend on, I think a lot of it's going to depend on, obviously, say the card who's available, such like that. It's probably, if we're all honest, going to more depend on, how All In does. I've been a bit negative on what AEW can do. And obviously the positivity feeling that we had with AEW over the start of the year, maybe put that into a different perspective. But who knows what AEW is going to look like come next August and what that number is. But I'm sure that's been part of the equation, looking at how AEW differ from Indoor. Clearly, you're looking at a much lower percentage, which is a much lower arena, which means a much lower number of people in London, which means Rev Pro, run Crystal Palace, expecting, a low number of people at their shows, but still a very healthy amount of people. I think if we return, obviously, to Wembley itself and the right down the road at Wembley Arena, what percentage would 5% be of, whatever the AEW overall number is? Let's say they do 50,000 again. I think 5,000 is absolutely doable considering the makeup of, AEW's hardcore fan base and what we've seen Rev Pro do at the Copper Box previously. So, I think as well, even if that AEW number drops off, the people who aren't going to go aren't going to be the hardcores, are they? The people who don't go are the people who went just for Wembley and weren't that bothered about AEW or weren't that entrenched, in the wrestling discourse and such like, and the little communities that we're all in. And I think the people who are into that are going to be the people who go to Wembley, and the people who are into that again are more likely to put their hand in the pocket to make a weekend of it and to do a Rev Pro on a Saturday. So they might not be as effective as normal you would expect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of the problem with this. You are beholden to how another company does for how that's going to affect your number. I mean, remembering that Rev Pro is effectively, for all intents and purposes, for all their big shows, it's a London-based company. That London-based company is like, we've seen what the limit is of around 3,000 for bits of this. That 3,000, like, I'd say they would obviously they'd comfortably do that, but it's within like a venue like that isn't going to be like enormously like, I don't know. It's just, it's where do you get those extra 2,000 from? And then you're relying on what AEW are doing and how well are AEW promoting this show. So we've seen it now, like for the second year in particular, they're still relying on effectively word of mouth and like an online discourse rather than traditional ways of advertising, marketing, using different techniques and using like television and really hitting hard with this stuff. And I'm not saying, get bloody Wardlow or not Wardlow, get Will Ospreay on Sunday brunch or something like that. But they're the kind of things that if they're able to, if AEW are sort of doing it seriously, I think there is going to be that knock-on residual effect then onto Rev Pro and Rev Pro doing a much bigger number.
Well, I think, for me, it makes it a bigger weekend. And obviously, I'm still considering the numbers on whether I will return to UK shows for that weekend. But Rev Pro running the Saturday makes it a lot more likely for me. And also, makes it a lot more likely for other such events potentially to happen over the weekend as well. So there is that too. But yeah, obviously moving on from there, that should be obviously a bigger weekend now with Rev Pro's presence there. A couple of quick AEW matters to talk, JP. Obviously, we've talked the Kyle Fletcher elevation on TV over the last while. I imagine they'll do even more of a job of that on Dynamite tonight, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, something that slipped under the radar as well. Collision of all places being the place where Big Bill did a bit of a grandstand challenge to Eddie Kingston. And like I said earlier, I'm about to do Cold Day in Hell over on Benno and Hamflet. But the other thing we've been talking a lot about over the last few shows, and get our latest review of In Your House 11, Buried Alive, wherever podcasts are sold, and here on YouTube too. But we've been talking about Steve Austin doing his grandstand challenges to Bret Hart, and obviously we're building to all of that lovely stuff. And I guess this is similar to that, but I don't know. I love Big Bill. I love Eddie Kingston, but I'm trying to be a bit glass half full because I think things aren't rosy with AEW right now, but they're certainly not bad. But I am a bit surprised this is the mode with which we're getting Eddie Kingston back. And, we're saying this blind to Dynamite tonight. Who knows how they can heat this up further and, what Eddie Kingston can do with the material. But I think we all, have speculated again. It's been a bit like Shawn in 98, as we talked about at the weekend. Every time there's a mystery man, or every time there's a big main event where the heels are on top, or every time there's an opportunity for a babyface to make a big save, we've all expected it to be Eddie Kingston, and we worked ourselves into a shoot. We worked ourselves into a shoot, and kind of lower level than you would have expected bringing Eddie here. Seems by design, and maybe the idea is, to bring him in with a safe little program with the Big Bill. He goes over an upper mid card, or I guess a mid card heel that the Big Bill is these days, and then he sets his sights on Moxley, and then he sets his sight on some unfinished business and such. But certainly not a program most would have predicted would be on the docket going into Collision at the weekend.
Oh, I thought this was so underwhelming. It was a strange episode of Collision in that quite big things happened, like in terms of announcements. And this being one of the ones that just completely, Chris says random as fuck. Didn't see this coming at all. It was one of the things I was watching it. I was like, what? Like just calling out Eddie Kingston. And the thing is, I like Big Bill. There's an alternative universe where a Big Bill heated up could be your challenger of the month. Now, obviously, that's not something that would, they would be able to do, and they're so inconsistent with the way that they book him. But bloody hellfire, he shouldn't be fodder for a return of Eddie Kingston, and it's a weird stylistic fit as well. I don't quite understand that, and I wanted to see Eddie Kingston come in the proper upper mid card. So if he came back and say took on Claudio, where there is obviously a previous history that you could kind of go to, I can at least understand the reasoning of that. Just a Big Bill feels just like a weird idea that he's going to be fodder for Eddie Kingston. I could see why they're not putting him straight into a main event program or something that's really at the top of the card, simply because of the amount of time he's been out injured, and he's getting on a bit, and they're a bit.
And it might be something he wants as well. It might be something he's requesting, because like I said, I'm trying to be glass half full with it, but like for me, it's less that I'm disappointed. It's more that I wasn't expecting it. It's more that I was expecting what everyone else was expecting, like the chat are saying there. Expected him to go straight for Gabe. Expected him to go, straight for Moxley. And this just feels like a weird misdirect. I'm willing to let it play out because how many times have we said it on the show? We want to see Big Bill get a bigger role on the shows. We want to see, Big Bill get promo time. We want to see him out of the Jericho verse and be his own man. it ticks those boxes. So again, I'm open-minded to it. I could imagine the match being good too. You know, it's wrestlers I like. I like Big Bill. I like Eddie Kingston. For me, I'm more surprised than disappointed.
That's it. It's just such a surprise, and it's so left field. And there's so many other options that that would have made more sense for them to be able to do without going straight into the Mox stuff. I mean, because AEW, I think, need him. At the time, we mentioned about the injuries, and one of the comments earlier on in the chat was about how AEW needs to be sort of like more aggressive. And I think the best person to kind of encapsulate is Eddie Kingston. Him coming out, delivering like an Eddie Kingston promo and coming back as this like effectively this more authentic kind of like real blue collar type of like battler in the same way like Mark Briscoe had managed to achieve a degree of success on TV. That would have like for me that gets me excited. I think of the potential storylines. I think, okay, this is a guy I want to see into the mix. And this just feels like, because it's so left field, it can't help but feel underwhelmed. I'm not as perhaps high on what the potential match is between him and Big Bill, like I've said, from the sort of stylistic reason. And I don't want it to be a kind of squash because the idea of trying to protect the health of Eddie Kingston, it's like, oh, you know, I just can't help but feel that there's a much better way to introduce him into the mix. But like I say, maybe he's asked because he's that kind of a fella. And also, how many runs have you really got with Eddie Kingston left in him at this stage? So you might, and I always feel that like effectively he feels so much like at times like the beating heart of AEW and the kind of wrestler who like it's not the sheen of WWE. This is a completely different guy who looks different, who speaks different, but there's that air of believability about him and you can't help but like him. Like that's something you should be really tapping into. And if they're going to go down this route, yeah, they do need him.
They need him right now, and maybe he needs, you know, to do a little bit of a tester before he can go in all guns blazing. Obviously, you know, he's somebody who puts a lot of pressure on himself. So, say he came back straight into like a world title program with Hangman Page, that might not be the best man management, might it? I know Tony Khan's distracted right now, but I guess the transfer window's closed, but by Fulham matters and the NFL season starting type stuff. So, that's maybe part of what the malaise has been with the booking so far. But I think what he can be at times as a good man manager in a positive way, and maybe he's seen, you know, this is Eddie Kingston, we've got to kind of bring it in with kid gloves first, and then we'll do something more serious with him. And maybe that's the idea. Maybe he'd be a very interesting, you were saying about like opponents for Hangman Page, he'd be a very interesting one to bring in for a babyface versus babyface feud. He can add that edge and, you know, lean a bit heelish or be a bit mean to Hangman and make people pick sides. I could see that being a compelling program down the road, as would a proper Moxley program, as would a Gabe program. So, yeah, maybe this is a road to that. And maybe you get that. Maybe you get those other heels going. Hang on. Why are you talking about him? Why are you working him? Why are you not focusing on me? And it'll probably be one and done too as well, won't it? And again, probably be a very entertaining one and done as well. But mostly just glad to have the numbers back. Glad to have a beloved star back.
That's it. Wouldn't it have been nice though to have a couple of his, like just a couple of recovery videos on the TV, even the stuff that he put up online with him and is it Cesar Bononi, who he'd been doing the physical fitness with, just to kind of add that sort of real sports dynamic of like here's a guy you love and he's coming back and he'll be back really soon. So then if he did come back with a big bill, we would at least have like, you know, at least you're going to be completely up to speed with him as well. So hopefully.
There we go. That's a positive story for AEW. Another one, obviously, well, we won't go too much into to Dynamite, obviously, with airing tonight at a time of recording. But, you know, there are some interesting matches on the show. Hangman Page, Josh Alexander, Mercedes Moné, Emi Sakura versus Rio and Alex Windsor. Ricochet, Shelton Benjamin is a match. And obviously, Tony Storm, Sky Blue in the Philly Street fight they've set up. But, yeah, big headline's going to be Bryan Danielson on the AEW commentary team. I think we need to see the show, JP, to say he was very good. I'm sure he was, as he was obviously at a Forbidden Door as well. So, yeah, I think he's, again, I'm sure we'll find out on Dynamite what role he takes, whether he's the fourth man in the booth or whether most likely he's the third man and whose chair he's taken there, whether Taz gets a week off, whether Shivani gets a week off. But, Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can turn in what was a fantastic performance on pay-per-view in that Dusty Rhodes type role to, being a more regular performer. And as Tony Khan has talked about this week, he's someone who you want on your TV. He's someone I've criticized him before for not making enough money off of. They brought CM Punk in and made him, the big deal he always was. But I always feel like Bryan has been a little bit lesser than the fact that apart from when he won the world title and we had that fleeting run with the world title, the gigantic star that he was. I think I could forgotten what a big household name he was at a time, and I think he forgets that sometimes and does himself down. He's a big time star. Why wouldn't you want him on television? And that seems to be Tony Khan's thinking here.
Oh, I think this is an absolute cracking shout of getting him back on there regularly. I don't, just because the type of commentator he is, and this is it was one of the things I didn't like about being at Forbidden Door Live. And I enjoyed being there and I had a great day out. But I wanted to hear his commentary. I was kind of gutted when I was like, and when I went back and did some of the rewatch when we were reviewing it, I was like, oh my God, he's fucking incredible. Because he just felt like an ex-player who's gone into being a pundit, who's just instantly very good. Who you just think, oh, okay, this is a guy who completely gets it. But he's also not just like a wacky character doing catchphrases or playing a character. This is a guy who is himself, and he was best sort of shown in the Nigel match. He kind of discounted a lot of the Nigel type stuff that sort of went around it as well. And I honestly, I thought he was so good. I think this is an outstanding move. And let's be honest, is this a bigger thing about perhaps changing some of the commentators and the commentary booth and things like this? I was thinking about like the Schiavone role. I know this is a slight aside. I'm going, why isn't he just Mean Gene doing?
He probably will, I think. That's got to be the seat he takes.
Yeah.
Because I think that's Schiavone's role, isn't it? To be the kindly old uncle having a great time.
Yeah.
Bryan's the intelligent uncle who understands what's going on, also having a great time, And
imagine, I mean, like you say, him and an Excalibur, him and Taz, if they could riff against each other, I think that would be great. Him and Riccaboni would be excellent. I mean, Riccaboni would obviously be the first call, and it's complicated by his real life work situation, which allows him to spend time at home with a young family. So I kind of get why he's in the position that he is. But honestly, I think this is such a good move, and if it can just give a general different feel of commentator, of someone who's commentating it like a sport, but is taking it seriously as well at the same time, because he did such a good job. He was just like a complete natural fit for him as well, and he sounded like he enjoyed it. This didn't feel like it was like a chore for him. And so I think it's a cracking move. And let's face it, the man talks sense about a whole lot of things. Even when he was being interviewed this week in the build up to him going up on commentary, he was coming out with stuff about all manner of subjects. And I was like, yep, you're right. But then, that's what he always is. I think he tends to be, his nose for like what works in wrestling and what works to the kind of audience that AEW have is generally spot on.
That's it. And, going into the pay-per-view, to be honest, like as much as I've enjoyed him in his fleeting appearances on commentary, I was like, oh, I don't know if 4 hours of it's going to work. And 4 hours of it fucking worked. I think I've got that same kind of burning feeling in my head of, do I want it to be special or do I want it to be every week? But again, I think I've got to sit back and go, prove me wrong at the pay-per-view. Let's see if he quite easily proves me wrong with the TV, and he most likely will. I think there's only positive things to come. And that, again, like you say, that booth does need a bit of a refresh, and hopefully Bryan can be the one to give it. But yeah, outside of that, anything other AEW we haven't talked about on this mammoth catch-up you wanted to mention? Obviously, anything all-out related or anything else at all?
Well, there was actually another Bryan related story to this when he was giving these interviews, and he was asked about the strategy from TKO about counter programming, and he brought up a point that I haven't seen mentioned as much, and I do kind of agree that this is very TKO in the wheelhouse of UFC about why they're doing this strategy, why there is so much focus on taking out AEW. The point of, he just mentioned the point of going, well, if there's two companies, it's really good for wrestlers because then you can negotiate. And then you've got a different landing spot. So it's good for the general raising up the base level of pay. If WWE wants someone, they're going to have to pay a bit more than what they would have done. Whereas if they're the only game in town, a la UFC for so long, because Bellator would throw money at some old guys, but they can pay really whatever they want. And they don't have to give a single solitary shit. And it just made me think, God, that is a very TKO thing to do, isn't it? It's a very UFC thing to do. We're going to dominate it because then we control how much you're paid. So if you want to make some decent money from this, you have to come to us, but you're not going to make anywhere near the amount you would do. Whereas if AEW's there, they've got something to barter with. And I think, Danielson mentioning it, while also being quite diplomatic in the way that he does, he kind of got to the crux of the issue there. And I just thought, you're spot on there. Absolutely spot on, Bryan, with that kind of stuff. So that was something that really, I don't know how you feel about it, but I was like, yeah, he's got this nailed on.
He always does. I mean, he says some stupid fucking shit as well. I mean, this week, obviously, he was telling stories, nice stories about Vince McMahon, which he often will. That's the problem with Bryan at times. I think his mouth goes before his head does. But yeah, certainly right on that. And he's seen it from the inside as well. He knows how these things tend to go. But yeah, outside of that, obviously that's AEW really. Like I say, All Out just doesn't feel necessarily like we're completely heated up, but maybe Dynamite tonight will get us all going and get us all excited for it again. I'm bullish on what they can do with the main programs, but we'll see.
I think this is the thing about the general build to All Out, because Collision was odd in the sense that they sort of just went through a load of match announcements, which you're not expecting it to be on Collision, but it was just sort of stuff that was like thrown into the mix. So,
but we will criticize them for not doing big stuff on Collision as well, won't we?
That's true. But it's almost like you've got to space this stuff out, haven't you? And it felt like they did throw a lot of stuff into the wall. I mean,
like the transfer window closed is what it felt like. And Tony Khan went, "Have we done this, and this on TV? Yeah, fuck you, say write this into the show."
Yeah, exactly. It is, isn't it? It's very transfer window-esque. I mean, I'm looking at the card. I'm not massively enthused by it. It has the feeling of just simply because, I mean, the injuries don't help. But there's a lot of stuff that feels kind of vaguely filler. The coffin match stipulation with Moxley and Darby Allin isn't.
I like that.
Feels. I'm not mad on coffin matches. It just reminds me of WWE.
Darby, I know. Off on it. I think he makes it his own. I think it's different enough for. It's better than anything that fucking boring cunt Mark Calloway's ever done.
Oh yeah, the match itself will be fun, and he will do some stuff to absolutely kill himself. And also, if he beats Moxley's protected because it's a fucking coffin match. So who gives a shit? It's like an ambulance match. It doesn't make any difference. It's just the nature of that type of gimmick. It's just not something that fills me with enthusiasm at this point in terms of the build. I mean, putting MJF, Mark Briscoe on there. There's stuff here where it's always the case with this. I like it.
MVP working a match. I think I'm all right with that. Again, it feels a bit pay-per-view, but I'm all right with that. Ricochet, obviously, they've planted those seeds since Ricochet's first and second week as a heel in the company.
Yeah. Again, absolutely fine.
Cope and Christian VSDR. I could do without, but the crowd will go mad for it. Tony Tackler, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander. Feels a bit thrown together, but. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It does feel like we're missing. Like there's a big match there somewhere that should be there, and it's not. But again, it's the state of things, isn't it? And if you could do worse than in a period where you have to rebuild, but use that time wisely to set up some new people.
That's it. I mean, I expect something with Bandido and Brody King, just as in terms of the tag division as well. I look at this and there's matches on here like Mercedes Moné Rio. I actually think that would be really good. I think it'll be one of the things where they'll just sort of click, and the fact that Rio's so small means that Mercedes Moné is going to be able to kind of do a lot of her moveset on her, and it sort of be able to kind of look pretty decent as well at the same time. So I expect there's a lot of stuff in here. I think that'll be really good, but there isn't that thing to kind of get you to get me in particular really excited. But I'm knowing that watching this, I'm going at these 6 matches. They'll be better than anything that WWE probably put on for WrestlePalooza in terms of like in-ring quality. I'd be pretty certain.
Yeah, I don't know if Cena and Lesnar can roll back the clock and give us some magic, especially with all our feelings towards Brock right now. So they'll have them beat there, but yeah, like I say, just feel like it's missing maybe one big match. But again, that maybe speaks to the state of things as they are there as well. David Hall saying in the chat, both AJ Lee and Roxanne Perez come to work riding a tricycle and go swimming in a kiddie pool. Okay, fair enough. I think that was...
No, he was mentioning before about, he goes, it looks like the picture of CM Punk posing with his 2 daughters, and AJ Lee is the fountain of youth. He really does.
She does look great. We didn't mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, it
In
does.
great
look
shape
like,
too.
yeah, it's absolutely like she's, and I'm not necessarily like, in some ways, I think her and a Roxanne Perez feud feels like that's sort of inevitable as well. And they've sowed the seeds for that, which is fine because I like Roxanne Perez. I don't have an issue with that at all. And she's someone who could really benefit from having like an extended feud with AJ Lee. It makes me think they'll probably do stuff where she's cracking onto CM Punk and stuff like that, which feels, I don't know, maybe that's tempting fate if they do that, knowing CM Punk's history. But yeah.
Well, in lieu of any other questions, like I say, this is Alpha Grapple Live. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about today, JP? I know you've had your eye on Noah and goings on there, and obviously some manoeuvring with the relationship with New Japan at the minute as well. They've just got stars to spare right now, is the New Japan story.
Yeah, really weird. So I watched day one of the N1 Victory tournament there as well, partly because I wanted to see Ricky Knight Jr. It was in Kurikan, which Noah have done very well in drawing, and I like to dip in and out. There's that part of me just wants some aspect of Japanese wrestling that I can feel really enthused by, because I haven't felt that for such a long time. In terms of the best match on the card, it was Hiromu versus Yohei for the GHC Junior title, which Hiromu won, and it was like 18 minutes, and it was a really good match. It's really funny because he just feels like he's been in a holding pattern for so long. I've forgotten about the fact that he is a good wrestler. He's had some really good matches. Even though he's getting older, he's not going to be hitting the levels of where he did against, say, like a Kushida or someone like that. I think I watched him win this, and Yohei is a junior division in Noah is really chaotic. For the longest amount of time, it was just like random heel turns, new stable comes up, and it's hard for me to be engaged in that. But this felt like it was a really good match. Hiromu had his working boots on. It's a bit strange / good that New Japan loaning out stars, but loaning them out to Noah. I mean, we saw it with Rohei Oiwa when he was on Excursion and was teaming up with Kaita Kiyomiya, and he's come back and he looks really good. And it made me think, like, when in doubt, if there's a lull in business for New Japan, they need to be open-minded, maybe, about working with a Noah. I think it was the last. I mean, they did a good attendance when they did their Noah versus New Japan show, and you haven't got like a Okada acting the Billy Big Bollocks, so maybe Noah have got like the more clout this time round if they did do that and go, actually, we would have things a bit more even, because that would help out New Japan. It'd be a fresh, a bit of a shot in the arm. I was going to say a fresh coat of paint. That's not going to be happening anytime soon until you get rid of the booker. But Hiromu winning, it was like it built to like a really good crescendo. I thought Yohei was as good as I've ever seen him. Hiromu was good as well. He's got the junior belt. He's defending it against Aita next month on their big show. It'll be interesting to see how long they've got him for. He's been, he felt instantly more interesting to me in Noah than he has been in New Japan for the longest amount of time. And I think it helped probably seeing that like very good Carl Fletcher match that he had in Forbidden Door as well, of like, actually, there was a point in time I wasn't just like bored of Hiromu. So that was good. Azawa's injured. He's out of the N1. He did a dive over the top onto Naomichi Marufuji, and then he just sort of busted his foot up, and then Marufuji won by count out, and now he's out of the tournament. I don't know how that would have changed the booking plans, but and the thing about this N1 victory, I'll say, compared to the G1, is a lot of the matches were like 7 minutes long. So it wasn't like this was a strenuous watch. Was there stuff that was particularly great? No. But even the main event was like 13 minutes. But it's like, okay, so I'm getting like a G1 of generally mid-level matches, but they're done in half the time, which I suppose I could kind of appreciate, as opposed to a lot of the G1, which just was dragging for the longest period of time. And the fact it's a much shorter tournament and much shorter blocks makes it easier to watch in the meantime. So I'll keep an eye on this and see what sort of like big matches come up in between. But I thought it was like an interesting perspective. And Ricky Knight Jr., I know you've probably seen the clip of him doing the whole World of Sport shit with Keno in there as well. What I would say, and we've not been the biggest like Ricky Knight Jr. defenders necessarily on here. It felt like that fresh environment was like, okay, this was good for him, and the crowd seemed to get into him. It's not that they were dead or sitting on their hands. Went over Keno, who's always going to be a staple of Noah in there as well. This is a guy who's thought of as obviously he's been a big deal in Noah for the last sort of 6-7 years, and he looked good. And you forget there was mention about he's 25. I was like, fucking hell. Like, we were watching him in the pandemic. He's like 21. There is like room for him to grow. Whether or not he'll take them up on that, it's interesting. But also the fact it's Noah, is that the way of backdooring him into WWE, NXT, things like that, just simply because of the relationship there? Yep, always got to be wary of that as well. And, obviously, I think we were saying when we were predicting the 13th anniversary, it's like, I don't think Sha Samuels will win, because if Ricky Knight Jr. is off to do the N1 victory, he's going to lose matches. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as like watching, it was an easy enough watch of a show, and there was some interesting stuff on it. I would say if you are going to watch something from it, it'd be the Hiromu Yohei Jr. title match.
Fair enough. Jake's actually thrown a super chat there in the chat. And he says, Hey fellas, looking forward to AEW trying out Cardiff and Manchester. How big are those arenas, and what other UK towns do you think AEW would do well in? The Manchester arena's fucking gigantic. At least for AEW, isn't it? Talking 20-odd thousand if they wanted. And obviously, as we talked about earlier, set up for 10 or so. Yeah. As we said, Cardiff 4,500 or so. I think is that the max you can get in there for wrestling as well, JP. But obviously, for those who don't know, and I don't know Jake, from the Windy City, won't know the UK geography of it. Obviously, being up north in Manchester, I think is going to help. I think there'll be a lot of northern fans who maybe were like that up north, JP. We don't fancy making a trip down for London for anything. It's not like those Americans who'll jump in a car and drive fucking 8 or 9 hours somewhere. If we can't get a cheap ticket on the old National Rail or on the train line up to down to Euston, we won't go down to London for anybody. So I think there will be people like that who skipped out on Wembley, who are up in the north, who might fancy not necessarily doing a trip next year down to Wembley, but might fancy heading into Manchester. Maybe less so Cardiff. That one's a little bit more difficult, I think, with the geography of it and where it's placed, which we obviously talked about last time we had a Wembley show. Yeah,
this is the thing, Jake, is that when it comes to the UK, a lot of the times you are beholden to public transport, and for the most part, it's shit here. If you're running anywhere in the UK, there are enough big cities who each pretty much have one big arena. I'd be staying around the North and Midlands. Like, that would be it. Like Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester, like Birmingham, Nottingham. Like, that would be where I would base a lot of those. A lot of those arenas are around about the 10,000 mark as well. And I think they would do good numbers for those, even if it was like sort of 7,000, you'd really feel it in TV.
What was the usual AEW? What was the usual TNA run? They do London, they do Manchester. Yeah. Would they do Birmingham? And they'd obviously do.
They would do Birmingham, I think.
They go to Scotland as well.
Yeah, and that's it. It feels
obviously
like
we've just done Glasgow, so I don't know whether you'd do it again, but that's an option, isn't there? I mean, you could add into it, and again, different country, both for Steph out there and for you, JP. But you could use the opportunity to get yourself to Dublin, get yourself over to Ireland, even get yourself to Belfast. Options.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. But Belfast and Dublin would be, and they're relatively. I mean, it's just up. It's only a couple of hours, so you can get between those two. They would be. They would be ones you'd go to. You'd try out like Paris, and I mean, say Berlin. I mean, there's part of me who would say Oberhausen. Go to the place where Hasselhoff played. We're out there, not the Turbanhalle, even though that would look phenomenal. Like on the outside, if you saw it, you'd just be like, "What the hell are they running now?" I think there's enough of these big arenas. I'd even say the South Coast, like Bournemouth has an arena, Plymouth has an arena. There's plenty of them around, and they're like someone like Plymouth, for example, is reasonably isolated, and WWE would maybe go there once in a blue moon. But I think there's enough arenas and enough places where you're not going to be like overexposing yourself in there. They've done Manchester and looking at the numbers for Manchester, and we spoke about it earlier on in the show, I'd look at Liverpool and I'd look at Newcastle as like if I was going to nail a couple in there, and Nottingham as being the next set.
Liverpool's tough though. We always say it. You see it on like, say if you follow any band on Facebook and they announce like a date in Manchester, there'll always be people in the comments going, "Why aren't you coming to Liverpool?" And it's like, come on, lads. I know we don't get the train down to London, but the train to Manchester is like 30 minutes if you pick the right one. If you go via Victoria, you're gonna do all right there. It's easy done. It's a 40-minute drive on a good night and a 2-hour drive on a bad night. But like we're close enough that you don't need to do both. But you could do Manchester this time, do Liverpool next time. Bashil, Linay saying there in the chat. I saw those graphics. Yeah, AEW was apparently looking at Birmingham rather than Manchester, which I think would have been a mistake. I think they're better off up north for this, and then you could do Birmingham on a subsequent tour and instead. But co-op seemed to weasel the way in. Linay says and the Ogden saying TNA used the Olympia in Liverpool, but that was obviously pre them doing the arena tours, and obviously as much fun as it'd be. I reckon Tony would do that. Maybe he'll book an ROH at the Olympia. Maybe he'll do that alongside this Manchester show. Somebody check. I'm pretty sure it's still open. I can't go visit it anymore myself, but maybe you could find a way to do that. I'm sure Tony could slip them a few tenors at the Grafton to open it up if it's not already open. Ramin says there Europe is such a market for Brags. AEW could come to Stockholm and do well with a hot crowd. There you go. There's a man with the local knowledge there. Bashil saying 5-star use some of those big South Coast venues as well. Oh yeah, maybe Tony Khan's like a real sicko and he was watching British Uprising 3 and International Showdown on DVD and he fancies the Coventry Sky Dome. Right. As Ewan says there. Yeah, could be the one.
Oh, but how much does that hold though? That only holds about 4,000, doesn't it? As well.
Still low. Alex Shane's White Whale, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
4,000 mean more than anything else,
It's really funny because I used to like when the times when I was like in and around Coventry, like quite often I'd find myself like walking past the Coventry Sky Dome because it was like the way into town and the way in the cinema when I would sort of just like wander past it, and it was just like, oh my god, this is just the weirdest thing in the world. See the Coventry Sky Dome casually there. I think going back to Jake's point, I think one of the things that we don't have in the UK, and this has always been a problem, is that we've got plenty of stadiums.
7-Eleven.
Through sports. We've got a ton of big arenas for concerts that generally hold around 10,000, of which are Wembley arenas. What we don't have is a lot of 4,000 to 5,000 seat arenas, and that's been a problem for like bigger British promotions wanting to run sort of like bigger shows. We don't have as many of those because we don't have that kind of big college / high school sports infrastructure that they have in the States, and you've got all of those places that you could go to. Because I think the Sky Dome is effectively a ice hockey arena, and it's very similar to like the one in Milton Keynes where I went to for What Culture back in the day, and that did about I would say 2,500 to 3,000, and it's novelty, decent sights and everything else, but it's a bit cold. We went to the one in Altrincham for New Japan and things like that, and that's really what you're talking about for those arenas, and they wouldn't look great for TV. If they were going to do London, by the way, I'd love to see them doing the Copper Box because I just love the Copper Box. I think the Copper Box is a really just nice, fan-friendly venue. And an
AEW could pack it and make that look great. It looked great for RevPro, obviously, but like remember what it looked like for New Japan, the first New Japan show there, the second one. But like I don't know, I watched it from home. Well, I watched it from Matty's house. Actually, he's to blame for me not making that trip. I'll blame him. But it looked incredible, didn't it? And that could look great for AEW as well.
It'd be the biggest pay-per-view if they did a Ring of Honor show over here. If they did like a Ring of Honor tour of just some slightly smaller venues and things like that, and then culminating in a Copper Box, I think they do a good number. Not because of Ring of Honor, but the fact that it would feel like a big enough show with some degree of reasonably big names that they'd be able to kind of like pull into the mix, and that'd be something for them to think about.
For sure. Bashir mentioned there while we were going through the comments, Naito, Bushi and Trent just announced as a trio for RevPro's tournament in Barcelona. I did actually get a notification of that on my phone. I did do a double take. Lost Trent Hilos, I think that's what RevPro are going with. Not a team I would have expected. Who does the least amount of work? Bashir last out of that trio. I think the answer's always Naito, isn't it? I think Trent's going to put it he'll have to have his working boots on that night.
Oh my god! Well, I tell you, of all of them, who really needs the T-shirt most, it would be him, wouldn't it? But that's a wacky trios to run into the meet.
He
Barcelona
makes it
as
a
well.
plus, doesn't he, Trent? Come on.
Can I say something?
Like me sat round the pool at my mum's lovely hotel,
Yeah, no, who the fuck am I to comment?
You gotta
on
make
that?
it work for
Trust
yourself.
me. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's good that they're going to Barcelona. I mean, it's good that for Naito and Bushi, they can. I mean, they'll be phoning it in regardless. Like, I wouldn't be too enthusiastic. What was interesting, I have to say, watching the Noah show, is there was like an opening package for like a Beamer Pro Wrestling, which all the promotions. There was a lot of Naito on there, which I wasn't expecting. And maybe I'm being slightly sort of conspiratorial.
He's the big free agent, ain't he?
Yeah, it was just like, why are they including him there when this isn't a guy who is like a part of like Noah? So I was like, oh, okay, interesting one. Just sort of throw that out there at this point. But yeah,
Andy says Naito won't change his clothes from the airplane. That was me yesterday getting coffees in Chiang Mai, looking like a dirty hipster. Maybe Naito has the same plans, but we will see. But yeah, unless anyone's got any other comments or any other questions, we've got some and finally stories here, JP, before we get out of here in this spotlight live mashup. And I believe you've been shopping on WWE Shop this week, mate. And what have you bought? What could you buy, JP, if you happen to have like a spare $60 just burning a hole in your pocket this week?
Well, if I had a spare £60, it would be probably going straight across the road to Aldi for a very fancy big shop, and maybe some of the steaks as well.
I'd buy a house for a year, mate.
They're selling cherry Dr. Pepper for one big bottle of it for £1.50. I was like, yeah, fill me fucking boots with that. I was there earlier on today. I tell you what, I wouldn't be spending my money on, and I'll just bring it up on here. Oh, you're doing it for us, thank God. Is this piece of shit? The Layeska puppet for $60. $60 for this, by the way. That they've now put on there. Mr. Iguana's faithful puppet sidekick. I guarantee you could find the equivalent of this in Home Bargains and B&M for less than a tenner. And if you're paying more than a tenner, you need to look
£3, I reckon. I've been out the country a while. I feel like this is the type of thing that'd be in a grabber machine. Like,
yeah,
you get it for 50p if you were good at them.
Oh, like, I mean, you want to look at yourself if you're paying $60 for this. For fuck's sakes. Like, seriously, the state of that as well. I'll tell you where he can stick it right up his arse as well. Like, I can't stand Mr. Iguana. I have no interest in him as well. I mean, I get the idea of fleecing a few people because that's how they operate. $60 fucking for that. Like, honestly, no more than a $5. And I'd be buying it for one of my kids. And I'd be like, yeah, you do whatever you want. In fact, do you know what? Benji has toys like this that he just chews on his bed.
He could have
like
another
dog. Yeah, he could do. Not getting a $60 one. Like, that much he wouldn't get. He'd be getting... Again, it should be at Pets at Home. Like, if you went into there and you were like, oh, I'm buying some dog food. Fuck it, Benji. You want to chomp on this? There you go. And one of those doggy ice creams or that they like to sell as well. Like, for fuck's sakes. Like $60 for that as well. I mean, if they do sell loads of it as well, then it just shows my disconnect with WWE is it's up there because I can't understand this. But you know what? There'll be some people who spend some money on this. If they're willing to spend like $900 on bloody house show tickets, then like fucking hell, then they'll spend a few quid on this. But yeah, Jesus Christ. It's not the only puppet they're selling. They're selling obviously the Finn Balor Demon King one. In there, like Demonito is what they've called it, according to the article on here. Oh, but just do you want me to read out the blurb from WWE, or should I just not bother me arse?
Go for it. I feel like we're getting a bit Brian Carroll here. It's a puppet, as Chris Elliott says.
Yeah. How many lies in this one? Part skilled superstar, there's one. Part puppet handler, no, I'll give him that. Much of Mr. Iguana's infectious appeal, that's lie number 2. Lies in Layeska, his trusty stuffed iguana that accompanies him to every match. More than just an ornament, that's lie number 3. It is an ornament or a dog toy. Layeska is his battle companion. Bring a touch of the absurd and your very own companion into your daily battles. What, like if you're an alcoholic? Like you battle with that and you just suddenly stick this on your arm? Like, it's not going to do anything. If anything, it'd make you go more towards the booze. With this Mr. Iguana Layeska replica plush puppet, hand sewn with meticulous care. Yeah, look at it. Looks very fucking meticulous, isn't it? in there. It looks like Ric Flair, like in terms of the sagginess going on around there. This plush replica captures the essence of Mr. Iguana's sidekick faithfully. Just be sure to keep your new tag team partner away from children under the age of 10. Who do you think are the kind of toddlers would want this?
That should be a warning sign for Mr. Iguana. You should say that to him.
If you're over 10 and you want one of these, I would just suggest you've got too much money. You've got too much money. Like, you've got too much money. If you're willing to spend $60 on this, and you just think, yeah, you know, it's a puppet. Too much fucking money.
It's a puppet.
Yeah, this is what you see after a week-long binge. And he's spot on there as well. Infectious like COVID or AIDS.
I can only see these stories. I can only see these stories, JP, and just feel bad for Danhausen, mate. Think of the millions that poor lad there could be making here if he was in the WWE merch machine. Yeah, I'll look forward to the news stories when it happens. You'll be excited.
World's smallest violin playing just for Danhausen, mate.
We'll see. Well, my finally story, JP, is obviously I am headed into a very exciting weekend where I'm going to be watching. Is it 7 Ric Flair matches from the 80s this weekend? We should check in with Ric Flair. Like, what's he up to these days? You know, has he been in the news at all? Is there anything going on? Yeah, Ric Flair was probably doing that same thing himself. Do you think he knows what to do with Google Alert? Do you think he checks for his own name in the headline? Do you think he tries to see if he's part of the conversation? Maybe he's got little runners that can do it for him, but he's trying to get himself back in with this latest tweet, JP, that he's thrown up. He says, "All my friends are gone. I'm going faster by the day, even though I drink each day. I can still do 500 free squats. Every day is a gift. Thank you for keeping me around, dear Lord. I don't deserve it." I mean, the bit around that, actually, it's quite nice. Isn't it? Quite a nice sentiment, you know. He's maybe just feeling his age a little bit, and as happens with all of us, JP, like death is a part of life as you get older. That is unfortunately more and more an issue. He sounds a little bit like my nana in her closing days. It'll be me next. Was that not a line on the royal family? My nan would often say that too. R.I.P. Nanny Peggy. But yeah, she never did 500 free squats, and I don't think she'd find a way to shoehorn it into any of those statements or into a tweet. Do you believe him, JP? I can't, but I'm not buying that he can do that without shitting his pants, to be honest, at this point, at this grand old age. But there we go. Ric Flair's going to Ric Flair. I
think the fact he's drinking every day and the 500 free squats is it's fucking hell. Oh, that's a great shout. But yeah, I think the drink has probably affected his counting abilities. It certainly still hasn't.
Why does he use uppercase like the start of it? It takes more effort to do.
Yeah.
Just shout like Marty Jones or talk in lowercase like Benno on forums in the year 2000. Like, why is he doing this? Like, you got to hit that caps lock over and over and over again. He's not using shift. There's no way he knows what that button does.
No way he's using shift. He wouldn't have a clue. You mentioned Control Alt Delete to him, and he'd be like, "Did I wrestle him in Puerto Rico?" Yeah, probably. Like, he's that kind of a fella, isn't he? Like, you look at God, You see this as well, like I don't say you fear the worst, but sometimes you look at him and go like, "Oh my God, mate! Like, what the fuck is going on here?" I mean, 500. What is a free squat? I feel like I should Google this instantly just to see exactly what this is, because
I think it's just squatting it. Squat with no weight, maybe.
I mean, do I free squat every time I take a shit? Probably. By that, then it'd be the same sort of thing.
That's what I was saying, mate. Sometimes it's just a hole in the ground. You need to, that core strength is very important to have when you're in.
I mean, I'm looking on it. Shilpa Shetty, you might remember, she's set up her own free squats lower body exercise. It's just that kneeling. It's just that lowering yourself up and down, and generally you'll reach out. Like, I've done a bit of that when I was in my yoga days as well, but yeah, he ain't doing 500 of those. Shilpa Shetty's in good nick, and she's not doing 500 of those. So he fucking ain't. I mean, he did I believe he did when he trained under Vern Gagne in the 70s. Like, that I could easily believe. Not this now as well. But yeah,
free plane clash. Not often.
Yeah, he's Rick is gonna Rick, isn't he, at this stage? This is it's just baked into the fucking cake.
There you go. Well, there you go. That's our last story there as well. And yeah, unless anyone's got anything else, we'll get into the plugs and we'll get out of here, JP. Like we say, we will be talking much more Ric Flair this weekend. So yeah, look, I am actually looking forward to it. And I know Garrett's gonna have a good time, so I'll have a good time. I'll do anything for our Garrett, including watching 1980s Ric Flair. I say that like it sounds like a punishment. I'm sure most of our listeners will be excited to do the homework for that one. And like I say, if you haven't already, do check out the Survivor Series 2002 show. That was a surprise one for me. Very, very enjoyable. Thought Matty did a cracking job hosting that one as well. And we had some very fun and wide-ranging conversations, including, I think, most of us actually being a bit of a fan of the original Elimination Chamber match. It was a headline in that show as well. But yeah, we get to talk about botches. Rico Constantino obviously comes up there. SmackDown 6 in a slightly disappointing one on that show as well. And obviously WWE at MSG in 2002. What's not to love, JP?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're also forgetting the F View, if anyone could remember
course,
that as well. Yeah.
I think most people forgot that. I didn't know that. Everyone remembers GTV. Does anyone remember the F View? Not me.
But it was a fascinating. I'm with you. I found myself surprisingly enjoying the show. If you want to know what WWE, that they can do a pay-per-view that's 2 hours, 40 minutes long and not be absolutely jam-packed full of adverts, and have some good matches in there, and you have a lot of fun, and you look around that period of time, and if you can take the whole fucked up the invasion stuff out of your head, which I really struggled with, then you'll enjoy this, and you'll enjoy our review of it so much more. Matty did a brilliant job for it. Cracking way to start off Dealer's Choice. I am absolutely fascinated of what to make of these matches coming up to Sunday for Gareth's. I have no idea as well, and I'll be doing my announcement for my. Is it me?
We'll have the pre-show.
Yeah,
you in the pre-show. Yeah, I'm last. Actually, mine's changed a few times. I still don't know. I had something planned, and then Matty announced his, and it kind of changed it. And then Garrett actually has made me rethink about one of my other picks that I had there as well. So yeah, we'll see. Might be a bit all over the map schedule wise. We're thinking around 5 o'clock on Sunday for a Matty's one. I think it's because he's watching the Liverpool game, or there's something going on Sunday. So expect a later one, and then yeah, obviously with the big pay-per-view weekend coming up, I think we'll be doing a Saturday one as a bit of a lead in for yours, JP, to WrestlePalooza, and obviously all in the highlight of Saturday evening, as well as the mid-side derby going on Saturday morning as well. And then I think mine will be a Monday one. But yeah, always worth it. Always a great time to sign up, and plenty of time for me to have a think. Andy says, "Is yours a film club?" Can you give that away, JP? It's
nope.
Is it a film club? Yes or no?
I can't give it away. I'm keeping completely stum. All I'll say is, I've had the one that I've wanted to do for a while, and it's actually stuff that we've mentioned before. I've wanted to do it. I'm sticking with it. I refuse to break it. I refuse to let that wacky part of my brain says, "Oh no, fuck it."
As long as you like it, that's the important thing, JP. Because if you picked a few that you don't even like, no. As long as you like it, that's a good start.
As long as I don't,
I'll take that. I'll watch it for you.
As long as I think, oh, let's do a mixtape of Dr. Death Steve Williams, so you can sit there looking cross at me about why have you made me do this, and me going, I immediately regret my choice. I'm very confident that the one that I'm sticking with is the one that I'm happy with, and I'm sure you guys will be happy there as well. Love the way you got Blue Velvet being thrown in the mix. Martyrs. Oh, if only for that one as well. Yeah, do Terry Bam Bam Gordy. Go through all the Bam Bams, and then make you watch a load of
Bam Bam Part 2.
And then make you watch a load of Flintstones as well for Bam Bam Part 3. So.
Oh, there you go. Well, lots to look forward to. Hopefully people enjoyed joining us on this Wednesday night. Usually we'll do a live, and usually we'll do a spotlight for the patrons. Yes. But obviously circumstances conspired that we've kind of combined the two this week, and I think it worked quite well. So yeah, if you want more where that came from, patreon.com/grapple to get Spotlight live every weekend. Yeah, Grapple Live will back to its normal plans next week, unless I pull something out of my hat tail end of this week. But we'll see what happens. I'm making no promises. But yeah, weekend show Friday, and then of course we have Garrett's Dealer's Choice on Sunday. But yeah, a Serbian film for JP. Maybe that could be coming up as well. Well, there's only one way to find out. Tune in on Sunday for the pre-show.
Yeah.
And, you will be shocked and amazed with the rest of us. So yeah, Platt's off to do his Flair homework. So am I. I will go and do that now. But yeah, outside of that, anything else to say? Oh, download Benno and Hamlet in your house. Like I say, Bury the Live review is up as well. Check that out too. And I'm sure there'll be a retro at some point from the lads.
You've done a brilliant job with all of the plugs. always going to mention the YouTube, youtube.com/@grapple. We had Rian, Irish Independent's own Rian Nocta, to subscribe tonight, which I was very happy to see. He's a lovely fella. And so why don't you join him in the Lovely Fella Club and subscribe to the YouTube at the low price.
Lovely Fella Club. There you go. That
Lovely Fella Club. There we go. It's great. Yeah. Lovely Person Club. So just so we're completely inclusive in there as well. If you want that, patreon.com/grapple. Go back and listen to that back catalogue. It's to the point where there's stuff we have reviewed that I genuinely have like no recollection. There's so much stuff on there. So if you're bored at any stage, you have fuck tons to listen to. I'll say that politely. So do that, and the like and subscribe like massively helps us out if you do that every time as well. So please do that as well.
And look, Simon, you didn't pick Ric Flair, so you are still in my good books, mate. Don't worry, you're all good. But yeah, whatever you want, you can join us and make your own book. Create your own dealer's choice, like Simon. Become a king of the mountain. That's an option available to everyone as well. But yeah, outside of that, JP, anything else to say?
All I've got to say is bye.
We'll see you all next time. Good night, all.
Good night.